Spiritual Underground podcast. Once again, it is Dan, and we are back in the studio at DTM Enterprises in the wood shop in my backyard. But fresh back from a trip to the Neverglades. Maybe that story will come up how that came about. The gentleman at the other side of the table had something to do with that. These little commercials, DTM Enterprises, DTM Woodwork and Handyman is what it really is. The Enterprises I joke around about because there's a taxi cab service that takes 2 kids around from this place, and that taxi cab service seems to run for free. It's running out of loss today. And there's a couple other divisions of DTM Enterprises, like the speaker tape service, where if you give me a text, I will send you a speaker tape link through the email or through your text, and I joke around about that stuff, but I really will. You text me and I will send you a link to a cool speaker tape. Or I'll send you a link to one of my podcasts. The music wrapped around the Spiritual Underground podcast is by Darren Frank. He is on the mend, although he is still in a rehab facility, coming back from that last couple surgeries he had. So that music on the front end and back end is by him. Go to Amazon and get 12-Step Spiritual Recovery by James Christopher Cone. That is a book that outlines, it delves into the depths of this 12-step process in a way that you hear a lot of the people on here that are sharing this juice on this podcast. A lot of them have been through that methodology, the TSSR methodology of the 12 steps. And I will go out on that limb once again and say it is the optimized method of the 12 steps. Want to get I heard somebody else say, wouldn't want to get too well too fast. Well, frankly, yes, I would. Why screw around with this? And why just, we get to do it the rest of our lives, but that first time, man, you can really make a lot of headway and get a lot of relief out of that first trip through if it's done at that deep digging, thorough level. Anyway, 12-Step Spiritual Recovery by James Christopher Cone. We'll get to this guest that's over here today. Had a lot of blessings in my life since being here and doing this recovery thing. And one of the most honored positions I get to do today is this role as a sponsor. And heard somebody else say it, and I steal most of what I talk about. I get a lot of credit nowadays. I guess I'm saying it enough that people are starting to attribute it to me. But I lifted it from somebody else. I might have made up a couple different things, and it was an accident. But 20% of the juice I get out of this program came from working the steps the first time around. The other 80 is from helping other dudes get this deal and passing it on. And that's just what I do today. My primary purpose in life is to do that. I spoke with somebody today as we went out and did a 3rd step prayer out at our parents' farm. And we were coming back, and when I was talking to him a little bit about what we're getting ready to do next and getting into that 4th step, and frankly, I know that I'm sitting there exactly where I'm supposed to be sitting today when I'm working with somebody doing this step work. It is just where I am supposed to be, and I actually feel that way behind this microphone too. I feel like I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. It's a cool thing to do today, to be walking and standing in spots that feel right rather than the other way around, where I always felt like I was standing in the wrong spot. Doing the wrong thing, thinking the wrong stuff. That is not what I'm doing today. So today, we've had a tremendous amount of guys celebrating 1 year sobriety in our home group, and Vlad was on a podcast a couple of weeks ago, and him actually on his 1 year anniversary. We've had a few others come through. I think last month we had 3, and this month we're going to have 3 again. And a month before that we had multiple 1 year celebrations, and everything that's cool along with that is that we're also having, so the 1 years are really super juicy, and it is really not much better than that first year of recovery when you actually have, you've received the miracle fully. But what is also really cool is that these guys are still hanging around, because we've given away a lot of 2-year ones this year too. So those guys last year, we had 12 guys get 1 year tokens last year. And I think they're all around this year. I'm not mistaken, but most of them are, and they're getting 2. So that's a testament to our home group and the fellowship and the tightness of the bonds and the men that attend it. So tonight, this guy here, we bumped into each other in the yoga studio. There was some energy about him that attracted me. There was also, he was like a damn good yogi, and I had some some jealousy wrapped up in that a little bit. And another thing I always noticed is he didn't necessarily do what we were supposed to. See, I'm a guy in the yoga studio. I think you're supposed to do what they tell you to do. I look over at this guy, and he wouldn't necessarily be doing the pose that was being called. He'd be doing something just a little different, or doing his own thing in there. And he still does. And now, since I've learned that's actually, frankly, it's like an advanced way of doing yoga. You're doing your yoga, and that's what yoga is. It is not. We learn to do it by following the lead of the teachers and doing that, and it's fine to lay back into that if you want to, and it's also fine to stretch your limits and see where your edges are at in a yoga practice, and that's part of what it is finding your edge. Just how much can you stretch? How much can you get out of that session on the mat? And I've always watched my friend here do that, and at first what I thought was a little bit of like showing off. I come around to understanding that it's not that. It's his constant searching for the edge, and trying to get the most out of his practice every time he spends time on the mat. So without a lot more about that, I'm going to talk about it. So it's Charlie, and Charlie's come into my life through yoga, and I've said this before that recovery brought me to yoga. I don't know how. I can go back and look at the timelines, and I say this all the time. The damn timeline just doesn't fucking work. It just never seems to work. I don't know how sober I was when I first got how much time I had when I first got suckered into showing up at a yoga studio. I think it was someplace around 18 months, but I really don't know. And I could calculate it because 502 Power Yoga commercial for them here in Louisville. That's who I did my teacher training through, and Charlie and mine. That's our home court. At the moment, I got this sciatic nerve issue going on, and I'm sidelined for a little bit, but I expect to be back. They keep track of it, so you can go on the app, and I can go see when my first time was to attend a practice. But anyway, come back to where I was at. Recovery brought me to yoga, and yoga ended up bringing Charlie to recovery. Now, you'll hear through the story that he had been, like most of us, dabbling in some recovery prior to this current go-around. I always like to say my current sobriety date. A lot of times I do. It's almost like it's like BC or AD, in my life. My current sobriety date is that turning point. And so we met there, and somebody tipped me off. I spoke about this the other night, and somebody tipped me off and told me that Charlie was in recovery, or I don't even remember what they told me exactly, but I knew there was something, and I kind of had a feeling about it to begin with, that there was something going on, but I wasn't sure what it was. You get this sixth sense thing hanging around here and doing this 12-step work, and you pick up people's energy, and there was something I was picking up. I just wasn't sure what it was. And then sometime down the road, and I don't really pay attention. This person told me that he was either in recovery or needed to be or something. I can't remember exactly what they said. I don't even want to put a gender on it, but what they said, and frankly, it was none of my business at the time. I'm not here to go out and fish up people to save, so I just let that be. And but then some time went by, and we were doing that 12-step yoga thing, that Y12SR, and I was playing a pretty decent role in it at the time. And in walks Charlie into there, and always whenever, I don't know if I remember smiling, going, yeah, cool. And it wasn't very much longer after that you stopped me in the hallway and said you wanted to talk to me. You were bringing people into the yoga with you that was coming from the place you were staying at, and you stopped me and talked to me, and I think another guy, one of your friends, asked me at the same time, right? Go ahead, you can talk out loud. Say hi, Charlie.
Hey, I'm Charlie. I'm an alcoholic.
It's a conversation, man, and we will both be exchanging here in a minute. He's out there mouthing stuff to me, so you can say, so you brought somebody with you at the first for a little bit, and that guy asked me to sponsor him also, and I was like, whoa. And that's one of the things that happens, they don't all stick around. Yeah. So I don't necessarily say no, because a lot of people won't stick around. You never know who's going to stick and who won't. But anyway, the rest is history in a sense from between mine and your history, because last Friday, this is a Wednesday, last Friday, Charlie hit his 1-year milestone, and everybody that looks at him, we had a meeting where they gave him his 1-year token on Monday night at the place where he lived at for about the first 6 months of this time around.
7, actually.
Was it? Okay.
But I'm not counting.
Yeah, right. And that was a common thing, is that you see those people saw this transition in you and saw you change. And that's what happens when we're doing this deal. You see people flat out bloom. It's like it's like a time elapse in the springtime, those things when the flower blooms. And you watch it just happen. And they feel like it's going real slow. To me, it seems like the more time I got under my feet, the faster it looks like sponsees get well.
Yeah, I feel like the first maybe 2 to 3 months maybe dragged on a little bit, which was right up until around Christmas. And then since then, man, it's been like the snap of a finger. Everything is just absolutely flown by, especially with summer and, the weather got nicer. Like, I remember the first day I was actually in that recovery house, like when I moved in, it was, I think, 98 degrees on October 8th or something, 2018. That night it rained and it got down to 35. It was 35 the next morning. And I'm sitting here kicking myself thinking like, I picked a hell of a good time to get sober, because I hate the cold weather. So, it's like that hit as if I'm not already feeling sorry for myself. Then I get the cold weather on top of it. So
yeah, and you start going, man, I probably overreacted. We should probably quit some other time of the year. This is probably not the good time of year to be stopping.
Maybe after Derby, right. That would be a good time.
Yeah, when you're sitting in October. So Charlie and I walked this deal, and he came in and I don't know if he actually, you'll hear Chase's story, and I remember the day that he actually said to me, just tell me what to do. But Charlie just did what I told him to do from the beginning, and there was never any, when you get that you sense that what it is you sense the surrender in somebody. And they're just not fighting you, and they're not blocking and parrying, and you almost think you could tell them to do something stupid, and they would do it. Like, okay, your assignment this week is to pick a booger and put it on page 283, and come back next week and you can turn to it, and there it is. Guys are just get into that, and I would say that joke about when my sponsor was telling me what to do. If he'd have told me whatever he told me to do, I just was doing it. And when you're in that mode and you're that receptive to something new and these new principles, new ideas, then you're moldable, and the 12 steps will work and do what it's designed to do, which is provide this spiritual experience, this awakening, and to you. And I knew from the beginning, as I said the other night, that the minute I started working with you, I knew you were there. And today I actually, again, this sixth sense thing, I pick up new people now, and I go, well, here we go again, to the internal smile, maybe even an external smile, to going, man, you're going to get this thing. You are ready, and this is going to be fun, brother. Buckle up, Buttercup. We're going to get you sober.
Yeah.
And even now with the TSSR, it ain't even sober, man. I'm getting that same kind of vibe, and we're going, we're gonna get you, whatever that is. You're gonna have your experience, and your life is gonna change as a result of these 12 steps.
Yeah, I remember, actually the first time I met you at that Y12 meeting. That up to that point, I think I had been at the house for almost a week or something like that, and I was really indifferent. I was not excited about being back in recovery. Hell, I didn't even know if I was in recovery. I was physically very beat up, as most of us are when we come back into the rooms. And I remember when I was in detox, actually thinking, like, I don't know if I'm going to be able to do. I do floor covering for a living, and it's a very physically demanding job. And I just remember, not being on any pain meds or any speed or any alcohol, and how shitty I felt. I'm like, am I going to be able to do anything? Because my back hurts so bad. My knees hurt so bad. Anyway, so I get out and I'm just kind of moping around. And I hadn't practiced yoga in a month or two at this point. And so I really wanted to try and do something that made me feel better. And so I texted somebody on a Saturday, like, hey, are you all still doing this Y12 thing? Just because it would give me an excuse. At the time, I was on restriction, so I couldn't go anywhere without a group at this recovery house.
Got you out of the house.
Yeah, exactly, and I get to practice a little bit. Like, maybe this will help me feel better. And so I met you there, and actually that class was great, and the guys that came with me from the house actually really enjoyed it too. So it was good. But I met you, and I remember the first time that I talked to you being sober, because I'm pretty sure I wasn't sober or semi-sober the other times that we talked. And I could tell that you had strong conviction in your sobriety, and you were serious about it, and you felt very passionate about it. And so I remember at that moment and listening to you share in that meeting that it lit a little spark inside of me, because one of the things that I've learned about myself is that I won't say I don't like, but people that are indifferent about things, or that do stuff, but they're kind of like, yeah, this is just a stepping stone, or, I can take it or leave it. It doesn't do anything for me. So when I see people that have passion, they have drive, they've got this fire about them, it makes me curious, and I want to explore that. And so that's kind of the way I felt, because I'd been in recovery before, but I never really worked any steps. I might have said that I did a fourth step, but I didn't really do a fourth step.
Yeah.
Not the fourth and fifth step that I did this time. And so I listened to you talk about it, and it just sparked a little something inside of me. And I kind of sat on it, maybe I think it was maybe the next week that I asked you to sponsor me. But just seeing that really motivated me, because I'm kind of like, okay, what's this actually about? I really had a thing. I remember trying to convince my wife for like a year that AA was a cult. Maybe you should go back to those AA meetings. No, that's not me. I mean, those people, they're fake.
Yeah. I've tried that, and that didn't work for me.
Yeah, exactly. That's just not my cup of tea. And actually, that's why I started doing yoga, was because I thought yoga was going to get me sober. It did. It did, but not the way that I thought it was. I thought I could go into this 95-degree yoga studio and twist and bend into these positions and wring all that sweat out, and the alcoholism was just going to drip out of me.
Yeah, not our brand of alcoholism.
Yeah, it didn't work. It didn't work for me. I'm not saying it wouldn't work for somebody else, but it didn't work for me. I would just drink and then go do yoga, and I felt like physically, because I was doing something, that would make it okay. So,
yep, I tried to work out and improve my physical condition at periods of my life, thinking that would help me with it and with my drinking. Now, I had no idea what I was really doing. I look at back now that those were attempts at trying to stay sober. Were things like pouring myself into church, pouring myself into these varied attempts at physical recovery, get back in shape. And I never was in bad shape, but trying to do that, and none of that stuff ever worked. The problem is that damn can full of shit I've been carrying around on my back all the time stinks so bad that every time I get close to somebody, I know that not only do I smell it, you smell it too. And all the amount of exercise in the world wasn't cleaning that can out, and going to church wasn't cleaning that can out, and going to therapy was not cleaning that can out. That just stayed back there. And although those things were nice and they were good for me, and I gained some a certain amount of relief, or certain growth and value out of those experiences, the can was still full of sludge and stuff that nobody was attending to.
yeah, it's like it's the putting a Band-Aid on a gunshot wound. Maybe a little bit of the blood stops coming out for a while, but you still got the bullet inside.
I'm not finding anything that has these tools that we have in this 12-step thing that gets the can out and dumps it out on the ground, and we clean it up. And we discharge the stuff that's no good in there, and we polish up the stuff that is. It's just exactly like that can of that basket of bad apples. I can have a really good basket of apples and throw one bad one in there, and it will start affecting everything in there.
Yeah.
And the fact of the matter was that I had all this, saying that can on my back was 50-50, it'd be a push of good stuff and bad stuff. I don't really know. It doesn't really matter what the percentage was, but it certainly was worse than the single one bad apple in the basket. And then you throw a bunch of fear and shame and stir a bunch of that in there with it, and I got a real mess I'm carting around with me all the time, and scared to death that you see it and smell it too.
Yeah, fear. I carried a lot of fear around with me, and I guess that's something I hear a lot of people say, and And, you know, when I was doing that fourth and fifth step, I don't know if it really even struck me then. But here recently, in the last couple of months, I've started to realize just how much fear I carry of acceptance. And I talked about it on that Neverglades podcast we did about I'm not enough. I'm never enough, you know, and I'm not good enough for this, or I don't deserve this. And that's not what I tried to portray on the outside, but when I get deep down and look at it, that's what was going on the inside.
Yeah.
And so I can mask it with all these things on the outside, but you know, you can only spray so much Febreze on a trash can.
Yeah.
And it doesn't work.
Yeah. Sooner or later, you got to get it and wash it out. You know, there's just, you could cover it, but sooner or later, or you got to get a new one.
Persian bleach.
We don't seem to have that option to get a new can. I don't know. It seems I tried to do it. I even tried that a couple times. You know, completely changed my whole persona, my whole who I hung out with, my everything. You know,
dreadlocks.
Damned. No, I didn't go that far, but I tried. I did reinvent myself a couple times, trying to shake off that deal. And again, you know, there were, like it says in the blue book, there were periods of sobriety. There were. Some of them a day, some of them a month. Longest time I can remember stay sober. I remember staying sober for 5 months once, like completely sober.
Yeah, I think I might have pieced together a month or two here or there.
I did that on church.
Really?
Yep.
I never tried that. I didn't. I got turned off from the church when I was really young. Just never felt connected. Kind of felt like I had done things wrong when I was younger, and really thought that God was frowning on me.
Yeah, the checklist already had too many X's next to your name, and there wasn't much sense in trying to fight that anymore.
Yeah, I'd already disqualified myself.
Yeah.
So I didn't try the born-again Christian path, although there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, like I said, it worked for a little bit, you know, and it was good for me. And I see some elements of it. You know, one of the things that I was doing in that was they invited me to do some service work for some things. And service work was part of what kept me sober during that period of time, was helping other people with no regard for any repayment or anything, you know, back. And, you know, and we do that here, right? I mean, it's 1/3 of the triangle.
Yeah.
Is service here, you know. So I saw that, you know, I didn't see it then, obviously. I look back, everything's a rear view mirror. But that element was valuable, and I see that today.
I did kind of have something similar to that. Actually, this was shortly before I actually did get sober, in that, so I started doing this Habitat for Humanity.
Mm-hmm.
And I can remember that it was one of the times, it was a Saturday, and it absolutely poured down rain the entire time. And I'm hanging gutters down in Portland on a 20-foot ladder, you know, and here I am, high as a kite, partially drunk, you know, and they're telling me, like, we can stop now. No, I got to finish this, you know, I got to get this done, like, feeling like somehow if I did this thing for these people, that it's like I'm buying myself some goodwill.
Yep.
And then it's okay, you know, what I do in my personal time.
Yep. And also, you know, if I can pull this off and do this thing I'm supposed to be doing, I obviously can't have that problem I'm worried that I got.
Right.
Now, again, that's rearview mirror stuff. I had no idea I'm operating under that parasitic deal of the disease or that's got me, and it's got a hold of the joystick called Dan. I'm totally powerless and unmanageable at that point. But looking back, I know, but my work, a lot of my working real hard was a cover job to show that I didn't have a problem.
Yep, absolutely. If I work hard, if I pay my bills, basically do everything that I need to do so that people don't ask questions, then
no creditors are calling, the lights are on, all that shit, you know, when the lights go off and they come to you and they go, what happened? Then, you know, well, now I'm fucked, you know.
Well, then I'm in
answer
trouble.
That question.
You know, my, this is funny, I'll share this. So my mom's parents are now what I would consider, or they're both passed, but they were functional alcoholics. You know, it was like beer all day long, all the time. And then not so much once they got a little bit older and the health started to deteriorate. But so when I was younger and we would go down there and spend time in the summers, or, you know, sometimes I'd be with them when they were still working even. My grandfather was a roofer, but it's like, they've got beers going all day long. And it's just what it was. You drink beer with lunch. You drink beer. Yeah.
Normalized it.
Yeah. And as long as you get up and go, put down roofs and make sure the business is running and the bills are paid, everything's fine.
I deserve a few beers at the end of the day.
Absolutely.
Yeah, if maybe, I deserve a few beers after breakfast. And then some more a little later.
Maybe before
all
breakfast.
Day, and
so.
Yeah. And who's to fault me? I'm doing my deal. I'm getting my shit done.
Yeah. This is my life. I don't know why you all won't just leave me alone.
And maybe they didn't wreck a lot doing it. There seems to be some people who can slide down that pipe without causing a lot of wreckage. I think there's still some personal karmic kind of drawdown that happens to you that you just can't, because like you said, they probably will later on I heard you say later on when their health started failing, there's probably some, I'm going to guess, was maybe a little premature had they not been,
yeah. Well, they both made it to 80.
Well, yeah.
But, looking back on it now, I look at the company that they kept and their friends and relationships and things like that, and those things suffered more than anything. I would say.
Yeah. Yeah, and this is, obviously this is not a slam on them. This is just observations of what these chemicals do to us when we do what we do with them.
Yeah, absolutely. You never saw any real physical negative consequences. Well, when I say physical, I mean DUIs, police getting called to the house. By most accounts, you would look at it and say they led a good life, which maybe they did. It's not really for me to judge, but you just start to look at it and basically I just say now that their whole life was built around the drink. Everything, their social interactions, and
it's kind of like I think, did you ever do that and drink? Well, there really wasn't much I didn't do and was on something.
Right, exactly.
So where'd you grow up?
I was actually born in Louisville, but I moved to Bardstown, Kentucky, which ironically is the bourbon capital of the world.
Mm-hmm.
When I was 1.5, 2 years old, and I lived there until the time I was 18. And I was ready to get out of there.
You live by yourself all them years?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I raised myself.
Born in Louisville, and I've thrown one of them sticks with a red bandana on the end of it and a little wad up, a pair of underwear, and a couple of apples.
Haven't you ever seen The Jungle Book, man?
Yeah.
A bear and a wolf raised me. No, two parents, very loving and non-alcoholic. I'll just throw that out there. They are not big alcohol users. Very loving, took great care of me. I never wanted for anything. It was funny. When I was growing up, I would have told you that we were dirt poor when I was younger, especially when I was 8, 9, 10 years old. Because my parents were really, I don't want to say conservative, but they were real frugal about how they spent their money. And so when it came to play Little League basketball, it was a big deal the first time I got a pair of Nike shoes because I had worn Walmart shoes for a long time, with the exception of a pair of those shoes that light up, the LA lights.
Yeah.
I thought those were cool at the time until kids at school were like, "No, man, you need the Nikes."
Not cool.
Yeah, the Reebok pumps, and the LA lights were out, man. I was only about 2 years late on those. So anyway, and I remember coming home, my mom, she was always the one that would spend the money. You can't tell your father about this. And so she took us up to Bardstown Sporting Goods, which at the time, Bardstown's actually pretty big now. They got a lot of mainstream stuff. But at the time, there wasn't, you had to go to Louisville if you wanted to go to JCPenney or Shoe Carnival or anything like that. Yeah. So Bardstown Sporting Goods, and she bought me a pair of Nikes that were maybe in the neighborhood of $60. And just pumped. I was through the, I was the biggest thing ever. And I was going to be a basketball star. I was not athletic at all when I was a kid. I was very chubby. And I didn't really have any drive for sports. But anyway, so we come home and I've got these shoes, and she's like, just take them to your room. I'll tell your father later. And of course I couldn't wait. I put the shoes on and I come out and I'm wearing them, and my dad comes home, and what the heck are those? And so like then they go into the bedroom and have this big discussion, and there was actually like some argument, going on there. And at the time, I guess I didn't really think anything about it, but now it's funny just how stuff like that kind of comes back to me.
Were you an only child?
I was not. I had one brother who was 3 years younger than me, and we didn't really get along. We're pretty tight now, but when we were growing up, we were just far enough apart that like obviously we didn't have classes that overlapped at school. But for instance, in high school, I was a senior, he was a freshman. You don't want to be caught with a freshman when you're a senior in high school, especially because I thought I was somebody. So, you don't want to associate with your nerd little brother. And so we just, like physically, I would hit a growth spurt. I was way bigger than him. So it's not like we could go out in the driveway and like match up playing basketball or something because it didn't work. And he was also a much better athlete than me. He did like gymnastics and stuff like that. I was always on the team that got the participation trophy. Yeah. And he was always on the team that won the highest division. So, like, there was never really any competition, and I kind of just disengaged from that, to be honest with you. I was more of a Nintendo kind of guy, and it wasn't even my Nintendo. I think it was my dad's Nintendo that he got as an anniversary present from my mom. And first time I played that, I was like, no, I want nothing to do with organized sports, even though I was still forced to play until I was about 10.
I will play this.
Yeah. I want to sit here on my beanbag and play Metroid.
Yeah, I remember a little bit of a draw to some of that stuff, but I never fell into the video game trap. I would have little periods of it, but never fell into it really.
Yeah, and I really have nothing to do with it today, and maybe some of that's because it's such a time-consuming thing. It's like I don't think they make games anymore that are designed to sit down and play for 15 or 30 minutes. No. It's
they're
like
to play for years.
Yeah, you got to commit to a minimum of 4 to 6 hours a day to be a mid-level player. So it's kind of discouraged me from the video game scene.
Yeah, so whatever the Metplex or whatever the thing you just said, I have no idea.
Yeah, Metroid, like side-scroller video games. It's like you beat one level, you beat the boss, then you go on to the next one. Whereas today, it's like a continual, like never-ending saga.
Yeah, I'm a Mario Brothers and Donkey Kong kind of guy.
That I can do.
It seems like there was a Donkey Kong thing that I used to play. I cannot remember. It's been a while. The first video game I remember was my cousin had one of them. This would predate you, I'm sure. TRS-80, I think he called it. I can't remember, but it was a computer. It was a PC. And it was just completely like monochrome pixelated monitor. And you played this game that was called
Pong?
Catacombs. I think it's called Catacombs. And you walked around in this caves and stuff in the dark. So you're looking at a mostly dark computer screen all the time. I don't even know how you really played it. Now, thinking back, because there was no graphics. And you'd once in a while, like, you get these torches and stuff, and you could, like, light things up, and you could see, but there was, like, nothing, like, there wasn't, Pong was advanced. Because you could at least see and react to what was going on. But, yeah, and I remember those two, the Ataris and the stuff that went along with that. I have looking in my pocket. I usually don't have things in my pocket. This is the Kroger receipt from a few minutes ago.
Don't forget your coupons on the back.
Yeah, no. I'm going to see if I can hit that garbage can over there. So you moved to so just on the growing up into things, it's tennis shoes and what I hear there, just like bell ringer kind of stuff, is the same old, because what it was is all of a sudden consumerism pops in, right? Mm-hmm. And if you don't have the right shit, then you get ostracized and set to the side. You don't have the right, because that was big when I was a kid. And I don't know. I shouldn't speak. It doesn't seem to be that huge of a thing today as much as it was when I was a kid. Because if you didn't have the right blue jeans and the right tennis shoes and all that kind of shit, then you really went over there in the not as cool pile.
Yeah, today it actually seems like the less mainstream stuff you have, the cooler you are.
Yeah, it's actually okay now to have all that.
Yeah, and maybe that's just me looking at it from the outside. Yeah. But so I always excelled in school from a very young age. Academically, yeah. Excelled, not in popularity, academically. And And so I don't want to say that people really looked at me as a nerd, but, I was not one of the first 50% of people picked, at recess when you play kickball.
It's funny. It's not really cool to be smart at school. Be real good. There's a certain
you got to find
middle average that you need to be. If you're below that, you're in trouble, and if you're above that, you're in trouble. But
you want to sandbag your academics.
Yeah.
And I was not good at that, but I didn't know.
Nobody gave you the playbook.
Well, yeah. If I could only be 8 again. So I excelled at something, and it felt good, because I'm getting this praise from my teachers. They're putting me in advanced math classes. And so it feels good to be good at something, right? When people give you a little bit of praise, you run with it, because I had never really gotten praise for anything else. I don't know how much praise you can get when you're 8, 9, 10 years old. But just to be good at something and know that I was doing what I was supposed to be doing and then a little bit more made me feel good about myself. And so I just kind of ran with that all the way up until I was, I'm going to say 13 years old. And I hit this big growth spurt, and puberty happens. And you discover women, and that you care what they think. And so that's when I really started to develop this image conscious, superficial, and I'll say even narcissistic complex. Because like I said, I'd always been a little bit overweight. So
I can't imagine that. It just doesn't make sense to me knowing you today.
People always say that, and I spoke at a meeting and I shared that, and people came up to me afterwards. They're like, I can't picture you as a fat kid, and it was true.
Yeah.
I won't say fat, but I was pretty big. I was pretty big if you go back and look at some of the pictures.
Well, there's some transforming things that happen to us when you look through, we morph around, especially at those ages.
Yeah. And so, I blossom into this, and then I'm at that awkward age where it's you can't drive, you don't have a job, but you feel like you're an adult, right? I'm watching MTV all the time, and Puff Daddy's on there, Notorious B.I.G., and they're doing all this gangster stuff, and so I want to be like that, because that's the music on the radio, that's the music on MTV, and that's what all the cool kids at school were listening to. And so anyway, I just got really self-involved, and I started caring. Man, I remember I would look at myself in the mirror, because I grew, and so I fit my frame right. And I would actually start working out, doing sit-ups and push-ups and stuff in my bedroom at night when my parents thought I was going to bed. And I would sit there and just look at myself in the mirror ooh, can I see abs now? And then try to show them off to girls at school and stuff. Just these ridiculous things that we do. But just seeking attention, really. That's what I wanted. I wanted attention. I wanted somebody to tell me, good job.
Affirmation.
Yeah, affirmation. I needed that. I had no self-confidence. Everything that I did was for the approval of others. So it was also around that time that I took my first, I'm going to say first, I may have taken a swig off my grandfather's beer when I was, 7 or 8. But the first time I ever drank to get drunk was when I was 13. And it was a big deal, man. I remember this girl was having a party, and her parents were going out of town. And
house party.
Man, I convinced, because my parents were really, of all the parents, they were the really protective ones. Most of my friends, they could say oh, I'm going to so-and-so's to spend the night, or so-and-so's having a party, and it's cool. They never had a curfew. It was just call us when you're ready to come home, even if that was at midnight. And my parents were always the kind you're going to need to be home by 10. Are their parents going to be there? Do I need to call and talk to Suzanne? Things like that. So anyway, I had this lined out that I was going over to a trusted friend's house to spend the night, and then we were going to go to the party from there. Because if I was going to their house, then my mom wouldn't ask too many questions. So anyway, we make our way to the party, and someone's older brother had gotten us Mad Dog. Or I don't think that's actually even what it's called, but that's what we called it. It was the Mad Dog MD 2020.
Yeah. I think it's Mogan David.
I think that is actually what it stands for. Somebody told me that about a year ago. So MD 2020, great. They passed me that bottle, man, and I mean, I knew exactly what I was gonna do. I turned it up and I drank until I couldn't take it, anymore. I got drunk, and it was awesome. At the time, it was awesome. I'm considering, I'm smiling about it right now. I don't like to.
The shift happens, and you finally hit that stuff gets in you, and again, a bell ringer where you go, hey, where has this shit been all my life?
Right, exactly. I've been looking for this excitement.
I'd have been drinking this when I was 6 had I known it, and I weighed all the way up to 13.
Yeah.
Is that what you said?
It's almost like, I would have been, exactly. I would have been doing this when I was 5. Like, screw Nintendo.
Yeah. Hold on.
Why couldn't I have just gone straight to this?
Jackass has been withholding this stuff from me, and now I found it. It's on.
And in that moment, I felt like, they should be making a commercial about this. We should have like lights and disco ball and rain falling down all over me, just totally glorifying it. But that's what it felt like to me.
Yeah, because it's the medicine that made you finally feel okay.
Fireworks are going off. Yeah. And it was I had arrived.
Right.
It's the best way I know to put it.
I think that first drunk is important
and
to talk about.
It was, and really this is the other part of it, is then when you go back to school on Monday, then you get to talk about it. You get to live it up for really the first 2 days of the week or something like that. It gives you something to talk about with your buddies. And, oh, man, did you see? Yeah, he was folded, bro. That's me and all my buddies are slapping. And then I'm telling all the girls, oh, you should have been there, if they weren't there. And just propping myself up again, making myself look like I'm cool and I'm the center. And
yep.
I want to be like Charlie. That's what I want to be. When really I'm thinking, you don't want to be like me. But I want you to think that. So the charade began. From there, I started dabbling in a little bit of pot. And so I had this experience. I started dating this girl who I thought I was in love with, like we all do when we're 16 years old. And she was kind of anti all that stuff. But anyway, one night, a couple girls and a couple of my other friends, we were intoxicated. And I lost my virginity to this other girl who was not my girlfriend at the time. And it had an effect on me. I didn't think that I would feel guilty about anything like that. But, man, I was tore up. And I don't know if I was tore up because I did something wrong. It's like I acknowledged that. I think I was really more tore up by other people's reactions. The like alienation, people at school telling me I was a piece of shit. You need to get your shit straightened out.
Yeah, it's
and
like,
so
hold on, that was fun. Now hold on, and this is what we've been, my boys have been saying. This is what we're after the whole time.
Right, this is what I was after. But
now I climbed to the summit, and y'all saying I'm a jerk for doing it.
Yeah, you guys are trying to bury me. I got my girlfriend at the time's older brother, punching his fist into his hand across the lunchroom, and people giving me like the throat slash, and so I just couldn't comprehend how I went from the top of the mountain to the bottom so fast. And people really, looked down on me for a while after that. So now looking back on it, I actually get back with this girl down the road a little bit. And I think, looking back on it, that had nothing to do with my feelings for her. It was all really about getting the approval of other people. Like, proving to them that that's not what I was like. And part of the thing with her and I getting back together, too, was no drugs, no alcohol. You're going to be straight-laced. And that sounds insane, to think that you would commit to something like that when you're 16 years old.
That's a sign.
Yeah, it's like these signs are coming at me from an early age, and I'm not. I wish I had the awareness I had today.
Yeah.
So, I don't really remember where I was going with that, but yeah, I don't think I wanted anything to do with this girl, really. Unfortunately, that relationship carried on for like another 6 years.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
So this was the no alcohol, no dope.
This was the no alcohol, no dope girl. This is where I was going with this. So, what I really learned from this relationship was how to lie and manipulate.
Yeah.
And
Sneak this shit.
And sneak this shit and how to lead a double life, which are not things that you want to learn. But at the time, I thought it was okay.
They're essential skills for guys like me and you.
Exactly. I mean, that's in the like the first aid kit. What's the thing that you can't have? It's like the Swiss Army knife for alcoholics and drug addicts. You know, we need to be able to live that double life. And I thought it would never take any toll on me. Like, I can handle it. But it stole a lot of time from me. You know, if I could go back, I wish that I would have never gotten with that girl. And I probably still would have turned out the same way.
Yeah.
But there is still a little bit of resentment, I guess, locked up in that. Not blaming her at all. I don't blame her. I've moved on from that. But just that time when you're young, it's like, well, heck, I should have been getting drunk in the wide open instead of trying to do all these things on the down low.
Yeah.
So
it was fun once you got to be free with it. Some of it.
Yeah.
When you found people it was okay to party with and it was all cool and everything was normalized again, you didn't have to hide it.
So I finally got tired of hiding it. And this is when I was about 22. And I had it, and I let her know. It was actually right before Louisville played Wake Forest in the Orange Bowl. Yeah, you're rolling your eyes at me. I know you don't know anything about sports. This is a big year for Louisville football.
Well, that was a sports thing?
Yeah, exactly. And so they get to play in the Orange Bowl, which is like one of the premier college football bowl games. And it was in Miami. And she dissed me. She was supposed to go with me and my family and my brother and one of his friends down to Miami. And she wanted to do this whole deal. She always had a weird thing with my family. She didn't want to be around them. Didn't want anything to do with them. You know, she always wanted to just be her and I, even though an 18-hour car ride down there, we probably would have said 3 words to each other. So anyway, she's like, I want to get my own room. You know, I want to get a flight back. And I just told her, I was like, don't even bother. I'm done. I was ready to cut it. You know, I was ready to party. And that's what I did. Proceeded to go down there and make a fool out of myself around my family. And I came back and just went crazy. I don't really know how else to put it other than I just went crazy. I was in college at the time. And I will say this too. I'm one of these people that was in college for the better part of 7 years, you know, on a 4-year degree. And I attribute a lot of that to my alcoholism and my drinking.
There's a Scott Lee saying, he says, yeah, I zipped through, and he says it differently, but I'll use yours. I zipped through 4 years of college in 7 years. Yeah.
Exactly. That was me. So I'll share another little bit of relationship thing that happened here. So after that ended, I don't know, maybe 6 months to a year went by. And I met this other girl that was a cheerleader. And this was going to be my rebound. Because I really wasn't that worried about women for a little bit. You know, I wanted to do my drinking. I wanted to hang out with my bros. I wanted to do some drinking. I wanted to go to the casino. Things like that. That's what I thought this was all about. That's why I thought I actually... You know, my substance abuse was only a problem because I had to hide it. If I could just be out in the open with it, it wouldn't be a problem. You know, it's the hiding it that makes it a problem. So I meet this other girl, really sweet, you know, and this is going to be my rebound. But unfortunately, I can't kick all these other habits that I've got. And the first...
So what are you doing? I mean...
I'm drinking a lot, and actually at the time I was wrapped up in a lot of benzos, Xanax, Valium, things like that, and I like cocaine a lot too. So I would do all these things to kind of balance one another out. You know, I would stay out late drinking, doing all this stuff, and then the next morning, if I made it to class, you know, I'd have to do some cocaine to get up, and then I would be really jittery, and so I'd have to take some pills to kind of smooth it out, and you throw a little alcohol on top of it, and I'm good. I got a nice little calm euphoria going.
Yeah. Always said amateur chemist, you know, I gotta get just the right balance of all these chemicals in me, and I'm okay.
Right. And
for about funny, 3 minutes.
I was a chemistry major in college. Like that's what I did, and so, you know, people would always say that to me. Yeah, that's why you like drugs, because you're a chemist. Like, okay, whatever that means. But it sounded cool. It's kind of like, yeah, I'm a street pharmacist. I never sold drugs. I tried to a couple of times, but I always took them.
Well, another thing, I don't know, it was sticking in my head. It said, somebody said I was eating the other day, and it's probably was I eating ice on the podcast. Somebody goes, what were you eating on the podcast? I was, I don't eat at the podcast, but I'm chewing on that ice. Said, the first week I was my best customer. The second week I was my only customer. I was trying to sell dope.
Yeah, maybe when I was a freshman in college, I tried to sell a little bit of weed, but I was smoking so much that, yeah, I was just like that.
Yeah, it was a joke.
It never worked. It never worked for me. And I guess you always hear them in movies and stuff say that, like, if you don't get high on your own supply.
Yeah.
Things like that.
Yeah.
Whatever. I can handle this.
I have a supply that I'm trying to sell only because I want to use it.
Yeah. I would have sold drugs if the people were standing there waiting immediately after the package was dropped off to me.
Yeah,
then I would have been able to do it. But if I had to sit on anything for longer than about 10 minutes, that was going to Charlie and Charlie only. So, not a successful street dealer.
I never was either.
Yeah. And so, this other relationship with this girl, the first night that we went out, I remember I got really drunk, and I drove her and her friend home. And she was really scared, and so it should have been a warning sign for her. But, like, I did the whole thing, like, I don't normally drink that much. I'm trying to put on this persona of a sweet guy, caring. I'm a chemistry major. I'm smart. I'm going places. Hell, I might be a doctor one day. And she was kind of lured by that. I think she had only dated athletes and, people that, I don't want to say they're more self-absorbed than me, but dudes that were really, really into themselves. And so I tried to portray the image that, like, I wasn't like that. And it worked for a little bit until, we would go to other parties and stuff, and I was always blackout. Always blackout. At this point, I had reached that point where I didn't drink without getting to a blackout drunk. I very rarely went home and went to bed, or I don't think I ever went home and really went to bed of my own will. It was already somebody took me home, or she took me home, or I slept on your couch or passed out on your couch. And so that, I've been drinking pretty hard for, I'm going to say, about 6 years at that point. And I'm trying to think where I want to go with this. Eventually, it all came tumbling down with her and just with everything in general. After all that school, we had moved in together, and we were kind of doing the playing house thing, And I know that conversation comes up for people eventually, like, are we thinking about doing this marriage thing? And so, kind of our trial run was we're gonna get a condo together, and we even had a couple dogs, and I felt like I had gotten into a graduate program at school, and I kind of thought I was pulling it together. Like I was coming out of it, I was getting past that wild phase. Mm-hmm. And, we're paying all of our bills. We're taking care of these dogs. I'm doing these classes, and I'm working. And she seemed to be kind of happy. And I don't know what happened. I don't think a lot of us really know what happened, other than well, let me say this too. At that time, I had pretty much cut out drinking, and I wasn't doing really any pills or hard drugs. And I might have like dabbled in a beer or two here or there, which was very painful for me just to do that. But I kind of had pulled myself together. I was trying to get through school. So I get through this first semester of this graduate program, and I'm like, yes, it's time to celebrate. And one of my buddies had hit me up. He had a big shipment of these Xanax bars, which I loved. I don't know why I always went to those things, man, but I absolutely loved them. And I proceeded to just basically black out for Christmas break of 2010. And kind of when I come to, I'm sleeping on the sleeper sofa in like the back part of our condo. I moved into a room there. I don't think I showed up for Christmas that year. Oh, here's what happened. She took me home to her family in South Bend, Indiana, and I was so bad on the ride up there that she had to call my dad and my brother to come pick me up in South Bend and bring me back to Louisville. Or actually, they took me to Bardstown, which is where my family lives, and then they brought me and plopped me back up at the condo. And so I really have very little recollection of all this stuff, but I know that was the point that to where it finally got brought to me that, Charlie, like, you've got an issue. Something's going to have to change or we're not going to be around. And I got enrolled in the Morton Center. And it was not all bad.
It's a recovery house.
Yeah.
Right?
It's a recovery program. Yeah. And it's actually a really good program. I think it's better for the family members than for the alcoholics or the addicts to some sense, because you kind of do it together. Like, there's parts where you do it, just alcoholics group sessions, and then there's other parts where they bring the family members in too. And so the family members learn a lot about it. Like, this was really good for my parents. They learned about the whole codependency thing and not enabling, which spells doom for somebody that's not really trying to stop drinking and drugging. But I never gave it a chance, man. I was still drinking on the low.
Yeah.
I concocted this scheme that I was going to, like, push off my scholarship and stuff from school for a semester or two and get sober. And really all I wound up doing was sitting at home and drinking, like, all the time. And so it was also at this time that I discovered these wonderful things called bath salts, which for the listeners that don't know, bath salts it's meth, basically. And they're kind of constantly changing the formula for it, so it doesn't show up on a drug screen. And I remember watching an expose on it on WDRB in the morning. They're like, the drugs that are being sold out of your gas stations in southern Indiana. And I'm like, I'm listening to them interviewing people anonymously on the news, and they're talking about the high and the euphoria and all this stuff of it. I'm like, I got to get some of that. Like, I can do this and go to my group and get everybody off my back. And it was fun for maybe a week until I started doing it and I couldn't stop shaking, and so, like, I cooked up this story about having really bad anxiety and post-acute withdrawals and all these things, because they're drug testing me, like, every day. They're like, something's up with this guy. We just don't know what it is. Like, he's coming in here, but he is not fucking sober. And so,
I never did those. That's one thing I never did mess with.
Oh, man. Be glad.
Yeah. So,
really, like, today, I think it burned out a part of my brain that I'll never be able to go back. So after a certain point of doing these things, man, like, you get none of the euphoria. All you get is just the paranoia. And so it's funny because I switched from alcohol and benzos, which are a major
euphoria, twice the paranoia.
Yeah, except it's like infinite paranoia. So I switched from a heavy dose of depressants to a super stimulant as a drug, and I'm not sleeping. Literally, I am up all night, every night, peeping out of my blinds. I started putting tinfoil over the ducts in our condo, like, because I thought that the feds were, like, sending probe cameras in there. It's not like I'm selling it or doing anything. I just think that they're out to get me.
Yeah.
And it's funny how your mind just wanders, the shadow people and the cars at night. MSD was doing construction out on the street in front of our place, and they've got the Crown Victoria with the little lights in the back, and I thought it was undercover cops for like 3 months. Every day they're out there, and I'm like, shit. And I would go and just, like, turn the lights off and sit in the bathroom for hours, holding my breath, which is ridiculous. I can sit here and laugh about it now, but at the time it was super intense, super traumatic. And then to have to come down from that and, like, go to group and pretend to be sober, fuck that.
Yeah.
So
playing sober.
Yep. Finally, what happened was with that, my girlfriend wanted me to go home with her for her little sister's high school graduation. And I couldn't do it, man. You know, I was to that point where it's like I couldn't imagine not doing it, and I couldn't imagine doing it anymore. But I just freaked out. And so I was supposed to leave like when she got off work. And I remember like I packed a little duffel bag and I put the dogs in their cages. And I just went and got in my car and I left her a note. It says like, I'm sorry, I just can't. And I drove. And of course she's calling me. You know, she got home maybe like an hour after that. And she's calling me like, where the hell are you? What's going on? And so I just told her, I pulled over. I was actually down by Louisville, I think. I was like at that Arby's off Crittenden Drive. I said, look, I've been doing all this stuff. You know, this is why I'm like this. And
you come clean?
Yeah, I came clean. You know, I couldn't do it anymore. Physically, I was just like a twig.
Yeah.
And mentally, my brain was just fried. And so that was the best that I could come up with right then was just coming clean. I mean, I had no intention of getting sober, but I just didn't want to deal with it. Like, I thought maybe I would feel better if I just didn't have to worry about pretending anymore. So it's like, it's funny when I get caught up in the addiction, and it's like, you know, you cut these things out of your life, like you cut school, you cut work, you cut all these responsibilities. And so finally, like, the last, I guess what you would call responsibility to me, which was my relationship to her, cut. You know, so now I've got like no ties. And I think my next stop was the Economy Inn on Bardstown Road, which is now like a Budgetel or something, you know. But I was going to go there and just like put myself into oblivion with the last bit of money that I had left. So, spent a couple days in paranoia there, and then I had actually met a guy at a meeting that I had to go to because of the Morton Center. And he called me every now and then, you know, would just ask how I was doing and what, because I shared on a burning desire when I was high at a meeting. So anyway, he reached out to me from time to time, and he called me, and I told him, I was just honest, you know. I said, man, like, I'm in a real bad place right now. And he said, well, do you want to go to detox? And I said, yeah, I'll go to detox. And it was at the Healing Place, and I actually stayed. And I don't want to go too much into that whole experience. You know, it was very humbling. If you've never been to the Healing Place and the detox, like,
I've never.
Yeah,
I don't even really see it lining up with you.
Yeah, well, I had tried to detox once or twice before. Like, I did OLOP when I was maybe 22 or 21, I think. I did OLOP, and I left this out of the story earlier, but, you know, it's like we're drinking juice boxes and coloring. There's no AA in there, or there wasn't. They might have given us the option to go to a meeting one night, but really it was just, you just kind of sit around and talk about feelings. And anyway, you know, come and go as you please in the area. Obviously, you're locked in. But so the Healing Place detox is like nothing, man. I mean, you've got these little concrete cubicles with a mattress in them, and it's fenced in. There's a little porch you can go outside and smoke, but it stinks. It smells like shit. There's bed bugs, and lots of Krispy Kreme donuts. And it was rough. You know, I made it through it, but the whole reason I was there is because I just had, again, in my head, I thought that if I got this relationship back, then I could kind of get back on my feet. You know, now that I was off the drugs, I didn't really need to do any work. I just needed to have a clean break from the drugs. That's what my mindset was all the other times that I ever tried to get sober. Is, you know, there's nothing really wrong. It's just that I'm wrapped up in this, and as soon as I can break off from that, then I can put the other pieces back together, and everything's going to be fine. Like, materialistically, the girlfriend, the house, the job, all these other things, like, that'll fall back into place. I don't have to do any work on myself. I'm good just the way I am.
I wouldn't have known that was, you know, I personally didn't have any idea that was like real, like working on myself was a thing.
No,
I had no clue till I got here, you know. And then when I first got in here in 2011, when I first started coming in, they started telling me that I still couldn't hear it for 4 years, like we were talking earlier, till my current sobriety date. 4 years of not hearing them tell me this is what I needed to do, but not be able to like internalize it, not be able to like, yeah, maybe for you folks.
Yeah, and I don't know if I was just shut off. Like, maybe I hadn't experienced enough pain, or my judgment was just so clouded, or what it was, because I had sat in AA meetings before, and I just never felt inspired by it.
Yeah.
Like, I just wasn't ready to quit.
I had a long day. That's not, so I actually experienced some inspiration now and again, but man, they were so short-lived, little sparks of somebody who would like toss some juice someplace, but I didn't know what to do with that.
Yeah.
As far as I know, maybe I thought they were high.
Yeah, and I did. Well, and that's the other thing too, is I've always remember feeling very suspicious of people in AA. I always wanted to poke holes in it. The doubting Thomas, however you want to phrase it. But I always thought that people in AA meetings left, and then, they would drink by themselves, or, you know what I'm saying? Like, they had just figured out the secret, but they didn't want to give it away. Like, maybe there's a premium AA subscription where you learn to drink like a normal person, and I
heard people say that come in. They thought they were going to learn how to drink by coming to AA.
Right. And I just hadn't figured it out yet. So, like, when people were talking about complete abstinence and, like, working steps, I don't think I really even understood it, because all the meetings that I was going to, and again, I could have just been deaf to it, but I never really heard people talk about their experience working the steps. I would hear people say, work the steps, but no one ever really shared on experiences of, like, things that came up when they did a fourth step or making that third step decision. And so, like, I didn't really know what they were talking about. It was Greek as far as I was concerned. And so the whole sponsor concept, I was not about accountability, man. I don't answer to anybody because, like, I don't need this. I don't need you all, man. I just need to get my girl back. And
so what'd you do when you left the healing place?
So that started a nice little, probably 2-month trip in and out of halfway houses. So, like, I did a tour of a couple of the halfway houses here in Louisville, like the Beacon House and Our Father's House, and I think the Talbot House. Where I would go, and I was either high when they let me in if they didn't drug screen me, or, like, if I failed a drug screen, they would tell me to go to detox again. And so I'd have to go sit at the healing place. The healing place people got to know me, and actually I got banned there for a little bit because I was in and out so much. Like, after you go X number of times, they're kind of like,
enough of you.
Enough of you, exactly. And I guess I kind of got to be a little bit of a troublemaker. But anyway, so I'm in and out of all these halfway houses. And one of the last ones I went to was a place called Sober Solutions. And this is in 2011. So this actually turns out to be my first, like, real attempt at actually getting sober. And I liked the house there. I was attracted to it because I had actually met a couple of the guys that were there in detox at one point. So I knew some people there. But they also had a work program with a commercial flooring company, Johnson's Commercial Flooring, down in the west end of Louisville. So, they provided you transportation and a job, and then you go to a meeting at night, and we do community stuff around the house, and then you go to bed. And when I got there, I'd actually had planned for somebody to smuggle me something in once I kind of got on my feet. And for whatever reason, I felt compelled to share that with these two guys I went to a meeting with. And they're like, bro, no, we can't let that happen. And I said, I know, I really, like, don't want to do this. Like, I'm really sick and tired of bouncing in and out. I just, like, I don't know what to do. That's all I know what to do. And so, like, they stayed with me, and we actually wound up going to another meeting after that. And, like, just clearing that one mental hurdle for me, that was the first time I feel like I'd actually said no to temptation or something that I set out to do.
Yep, had a win.
Yeah, it's right. Like, that momentum's a funny thing. Like, one little bit of momentum can turn into a big deal. And so it's like, I made it through doing it once. And so it just kind of snowballed, and I really started to catch on to, like, the flooring thing, which is what I still do today, not for them. And but anyway, so I liked at that point, I liked the social aspect of going to AA because I got to know people in it. And so, like, it helped fill the void for me.
Yeah.
Because I'm not in a relationship at this point. And I'll go back and point this out, too. I think when I was a little bit younger, that was part of the struggle that I had with AA was that I thought my social life was over.
Yeah.
You know, like, I'm like, what the hell am I going to do? How am I going to meet people? Like, if I can't go to a bar, what the heck am I going to do? And actually, I just had this conversation with my sponsee on the way over here. 'Cause he's 25. And, you know, these are some of the things that he's asking me and just, like, questions that go through his head. And so, anyway, coming back to Sober Solutions, like, I really felt a part of, you know, for the most part, people there were trying to get sober. It's kind of like, okay, brothers, we're going to do this together. And there was support and love there. But the one thing that I really failed to do was I got a sponsor that didn't really hold me accountable. Like, you know, he might jar me a little bit, but, like, we didn't really work steps. And some of that was, I think, because maybe he hadn't really worked a lot of steps. You know, he had accumulated some dry time and he was sober and he had a sponsor. But anyway, that brand of recovery and doing the steps and everything, it just didn't click with me. It didn't take. And actually, I was really caught up in work and trying to do that too. And so, like, the steps and the program were an afterthought at this point. It's kind of like, okay, this has now become a program just to, like, I guess, reacclimate me to society and help me get back up on my feet with a job. And I'm maybe going to work some steps while I'm here.
Yeah, some integration.
Yeah, like I might integrate, exactly, some reintegration. So anyway, the problem came when work really started to pile on me, and, like, it's very physically demanding. I was beat up. So some of the guys at the house had started doing this stuff called kratom, which, for people that don't know, it's a plant. It's like an herb, but they make it into, like, a powder form. And anyway, it produces an opiate-like effect. It's not actually an opiate, but it produces an opiate-like effect. And in certain doses, it kind of gives you an up feeling. In other doses, it kind of gives you, like, a mellow type feeling. I don't know, but for me, I likened it to taking, you know, a couple Percocets. And anyway, first time I did it, man, I was like, this is great. Now I can do this when I work, you know, and
it's legal. You can get it.
Yeah, it's legal, man, you know, and
I kind of put it off as like this organic kind of deal.
Right. And you know, the way that it was presented to me, or actually, I'm not even going to say that. I'm going to say the way that I justified it to myself in my head was that, like, man, this is just a dietary supplement. You know, this is like my nutrition.
Yeah. It's like fish oil or something.
Right. Well, like, I mean, now, you know, like, I always like to take these super green foods. Like, it's a dietary supplement that I actually do use as directed. And it's just like plants and kale and things like that. This is just one specific plant, and
it gets you high.
I spun it. Yeah, it gets me high, man. It got me juiced, and I could lay a lot of floor.
Yeah.
And so for a while, it was just for work, you know. And anyway, I got a token, you know, pretending to be sober off that stuff. And in my mind, like, I really thought I was sober. And that continued for...
I wasn't drinking.
Yeah, it wasn't drinking. I didn't have a needle in my arm. I wasn't, you know, smoking it off foil. And so... And I didn't wake up in a blackout the next day. So it's like, man, this is recovery. Like, you know, we talk about work your program. It's like, well, this is my brand of recovery. And it includes herbal supplements. And so I really thought I was sober. And I got, like I said, I got a token. And that carried on for almost 5 years. Until I finally realized, and I had realized this well before then, like probably after a year of doing that I was physically dependent on it, man. I couldn't sleep through the night. You know, I would wake up at 2 or 3 and have to, like, have something, like, mixed up or ready to go somewhere at my house. Or at this point, I had actually moved in with who is now my wife. But I would stash things, you know, around the house. Like, I'm getting up to just use the bathroom or get a drink of water. But I would go do it because I would just be in, like, a full-blown detox. Sneezing, watery eyes, stomach trouble, legs are cramping up, I'm tossing and turning, having hot flashes, all those good things. So, like any good alcoholic, I concoct this scheme that to get off this, I just need to do this for a little bit. And my answer that I came up with was that I just need some pain pills and I just need some Xanax. And
circle back to that.
Yeah, it's going to take away that anxiety that I get from the withdrawals. And, the little bit of opiate is going to do that. And I'll just do it for a couple days until I get through these withdrawals, and then I'll cut it off. And the problem with this is that I don't realize what a big hole I have on the inside. I mean, like a spiritual hole or a void that I need to fill. And, of course, that didn't go as planned. And then I was just back to doing kratom and hard drugs. And I immediately picked up the cocaine again. And actually, I went right out and I found a couple of good doctors that would write me prescriptions for meds, Adderall and Xanax, so I didn't have to buy that stuff on the street because it's a whole lot cheaper when my insurance will pay for it.
Yeah.
And those will last me for 2 or 3 days. A month will last me for 2 or 3 days. But, and so I get back into hard drugs for a couple of years. And
the hard drugs, you mean, but the prescriptions?
I mean the prescriptions, I mean the cocaine, and the alcohol.
Yeah.
I mean just everything basically outside of putting a needle in my arm. I never picked that back up. But I did go through a phase earlier. But I did not pick that back up this time because that would really mean I had a problem.
Right.
It's like, I swore I'd never do that again. That's for junkies. I'm not one of them. So that leads up to where I am now. And there's a couple incidents that kind of brought me to getting back into recovery. And one of them was when my wife and I, for our 1-year anniversary, I got married while this was going on too. And somehow I managed to pull it together for a couple days down in Mexico around my family and my wife, and just do a little bit of drinking, kind of on enough to where I was miserable on the inside, like going crazy, like I want to get drunk.
Yeah.
But to where I wasn't physically, like sick or going absolutely bonkers, like sweating. And so we got married. A year later, for our 1-year anniversary, we were going to go to Vietnam for her family. She's actually a Vietnamese immigrant. So we were going to go see her family. She hasn't been there since she was really young. We were going with her mom and a couple of her sisters. So I've been doing all these drugs, and I'm like, I can't take this shit on an airplane. And we got, just the fly time was 18 hours, not counting layovers, which you got another 6 or 7 hours in there. So we're talking a full day. I'm like, man, I can't go.
Yeah, I remember flying over there and being on the clock a 30-hour deal from wheels up to wheels down type of deal, or from like house to hotel.
I think that's exactly what it was, because I remember looking at it once we got there, and I was like, wow. I want to say it was right around 30 hours. And so I detoxed on the couch, and she saw every minute of it. And it was really bad. And I don't know how I did that, to be honest.
Before going on the trip?
At home before going on the trip, like 5 days before. And I think we were leaving on a Monday, and I started on like a Wednesday night or something like that. So I do this, and like she sees me going through it, and anyway, I know she felt bad for me. And I think in a way she was actually like proud of me, like, wow, look at him, he's doing this, he's been dishonest, he came clean about it, and he's doing this for me. And so again, my disease just totally blinds me off to like how susceptible I'll be. And I remember right before we left, I actually went and did a yoga practice. I felt great, man, because I was kind of getting over some of the physical detoxes, and I just like sweat all this out. And I'm like, yes, I'm free. I get to get on this plane. We're going to go have so much fun over in Vietnam for 3 weeks. And we get there, and our first layover was in Chicago. So I'm in Chicago, and I was like, I'm going to go to the bathroom. I come out of the bathroom, and like right across from the bathroom is a sports bar. And like the terminal where we were, it's, you know, it's a little ways down. I'm like, shit, this plane ride would be a lot better if I just had like, you know, 1 or 2 drinks. Well, like 8 Bud Lights later, I mean, and I was just putting them down as fast as they could bring them to me. 8 Bud Lights later, we're on the plane, you know, and like my wife's asking me what's wrong with me and like something's different. And luckily I just kind of knocked out for most of that next 15-hour flight. I think some of that's because I was still physically so tired from like the detox and I hadn't really slept much. And so a little bit of alcohol kind of helped me pass out for a while. But we get there and we get to our hotel before we actually go out into the country. And I couldn't sleep, you know, the time difference and all that. And so I was like, I'm going to take a walk, you know, which is actually a very dangerous thing to do by yourself in Ho Chi Minh City if you're just a white guy, you know, by yourself. But anyway, it's pretty early in the morning. And I'm walking around, man, and I see this sign for a pharmacy. And immediately I pull out my phone and I Google. I'm like, what drugs can you buy over the counter in Vietnam?
All of them.
Yeah. Answer D, all of the above. Pretty much. And so it was like a buffet, man. And my biggest problem right then was that all I had was US dollars on me. You know, in my mind, like that's my biggest problem. I got to find somebody to do it, to swap this out for dong. That's what they call them. It's their currency is dong. So I finally find somebody to do it, man. I mean, they were like cutthroat, but I didn't care. And so, I mean, I'm just buying all kinds of stuff. I remember I had this black bag, like, you know, she wrapped it up. Like, you're actually not supposed to have it out. You know, you're supposed to, like, keep it because they're really supposed to check for a prescription, but they'll just sell you whatever. So I walked right across the street to this, like, all-day cafe, and they just serve beer at any time, man. So I went in the bathroom, and I took, like, an entire blister pack full of Valium. And came out and I had a couple beers and I walked back to my hotel and like literally that's the last thing that I remember for a week. Yeah, I mean, I won't go into the details, but I embarrassed myself in front of her family that she hasn't seen, you know, and she's talked me up like, oh, he's such this great guy, and I'm either passed out or I'm fighting with her. At one point, I actually told her she wanted to put me back on a plane after a couple days before we went to the country. We spent a few days in the city.
Let's send your ass back home.
She's like, I need to put you on a plane. And she actually called my parents and was like, we need to, you know, figure out how to do this. And I remember I pulled her in front of all of her family that was there. I said, man, if you put me on that fucking plane, I'm going to divorce you. You know, I was like, as soon as you come back, I'll have the divorce papers ready when you get off that plane. And so at that point, she pretty much just disengaged. You know, I don't even think I talked to her much the rest of that trip. It was her sister's boyfriend who had come with us too, or her sister. Like, that's kind of who I had to run with. And eventually they found my stash of pills. So us being out in the country, I was not happy about that, but they took that and flushed all that. So I had to revert to alcohol only. You know, which was still, I was okay with that. And I remember my sister's boyfriend telling me, he's like, man, I'm so glad you can just drink now, dude. He's like, you were a complete asshole on all those pills, but you're pretty fun when you're just drinking. And so it's like, it's funny because I think like, oh yeah, now I'm all better. Yeah. I'm good now, you know, like instantly just because I stopped doing that, like everything should be all fine. And it wasn't. And when we get back to the States, you know, I remember we had this talk. We went to Seneca Park and we sat down one day and it was just, she was real calm about the whole thing. She said, you know, you got to figure this out. Because I can't tell you how much longer I'm going to be around if you don't. And it didn't really strike me, you know, like I didn't cry. I didn't have some aha moment or anything like that. And that's where I had the idea that I was just going to go solo yoga. Yoga was going to get me sober. So I really delved into that. I would go like every day after work, you know, and I did pretty good on it for a while. And I think I actually may have not drank or done anything for a couple months. And this leads up right to before my sobriety date now. Somebody texted me, an old acquaintance. Man, I got a bunch of Xanax I got to get rid of. And anyway, that turned into like a 3-week just blackout, but I also, picked up some cocaine, and so I was just completely erratic. I was like all over the map on this. And thankfully my wife was out of town for work for a while, for a decent portion of that. And the last night that I ever took a drink or a drug, it was getting kind of late, but I'd been up for a couple days. And when I got really fucked up, what I liked to do was go to Harbor Freight and look for tools. I would like sit in there for hours, and then like I'd call my buddies like, "Hey man, like check out this air compressor I got. I only paid $25 for it." So I'm out in my garage like playing with tools, and I look up and I think that somebody's standing in my back door, and they've got a gun pointed at me, and I've got this air compressor with a nail gun hooked up, and so I start shooting nails at the back of my house, and I freak out. I like barrel roll, hop in my van, and just take off. And I'd been on the phone with my dad when this whole thing happened, because he's like bitching at me. And he called a good friend of mine, Kelly, who's in recovery. He's about 5 years sober now. And he's like, "Look, I don't know, what's going on. I'm beside myself. Like, can you do a welfare check? I know he's not at the house. I know he's driving somewhere." And anyway, Kelly drove up and down the Waterston Expressway looking for me, because I was also a frequent gas station lobbyer. I love to just sit in gas station parking lots and drink and do drugs. And so anyway, but the last station he stops at, he finds me. I'm there, and he hops in my van, and he's like, "What's up, bro?" And I haven't seen him in a while. He used to work for me, and he was a friend from when I was in the program before, but "What's up, bro?" And I knew exactly what was up, what time it was. And I didn't fight it at all, in a way I was actually a little bit relieved, because I was so scared. Like, number one, I thought somebody was after me. Number two, there was actually a cop that had just pulled in the parking lot. So I was a little sketched out about that, because I had a plate full of cocaine in my lap. And, it was just kind of like, what a coincidence. Today I don't really believe in coincidences, but at the time it's kind of like, maybe this is a sign, And he said, "You know where we're going?" I was like, "I'll go tomorrow, man." And he said, "Oh no." And I didn't fight it anymore after that. I asked him just to give me a minute so I could finish kind of doing what I was doing and compose myself. And his girlfriend actually took my van back to my house for me, and he and I went straight to detox at the healing place again. No bags, nothing. And I was pretty miserable for about 4 or 5 days. I think that was like a Wednesday or Thursday night. And I got out on the following Tuesday. And I wound up back at Sober Solutions, because he's also the house or program director there. And so I liked the program before. I was really toying with going into the healing place program. But I had my business kind of hanging in the wind there. And I also had this relationship with my wife. And I knew that if I was at the healing place, both of those were probably going to be gone, just because you're extremely limited contact and you can't work. You can't have a job. So I go back to Sober Solutions. I'm not really excited to be there, but I'm glad that I at least have some direction. And went to a meeting up at the Ice House one of the first days we were there, and it's kind of like, fuck, nothing's changed. I used to hate going to the Ice House when I was there before. And I guess it was because I just didn't, and I'm not saying there's not some good recovery in those rooms, but I just didn't connect with it. And maybe that's because I wasn't in tune, and maybe I wasn't looking for it. So right before I had asked you to sponsor me, like a couple of days before, I'd asked this other dude to kind of temporarily sponsor me. And we talked for a couple of days, and then he stopped answering my calls. And so I convinced the guys from the house one day to go to that Y12 meeting with me. And I met you, and I was like, I think I'm going to ask him to sponsor me. Actually, the thought didn't even really occur to me at first. It occurred to me later that night. But I was fascinated because the other guys that had come with me were talking about you. You know, like you were a celebrity, which you are in my eyes. But they're like, oh man, yeah, he's really cool. How do you know him? And I want to say I probably actually embellished our relationship. Like, oh yeah, Dan's a good dude. We practice together all the time. and so I didn't know what I wanted out of this. I didn't know what to expect about working the 12 steps. But I will tell you this. I didn't go to Sober Solutions just looking to get my wife and my life back. I genuinely wanted something different. And so maybe that's what made the difference for me.
Sure.
Kind of going out. Like, I was just so sick of it. Like, I characterize my life had always been like these series of build-ups, and so like I look back on it, and the question that always comes to mind is, but then what? So like whether it was relationships or that next high or that next part of school or that next job, it's kind of like, okay, but then what? And deep down, looking back at it now, it's like I realized I never was going to be happy. You win the lottery. Okay, but then what? Yeah. It's kind of always like...
The whole anticlimactic, everything was just...
right.
Yeah.
And so after we started working together, I remember you told me one time about like peeking around that next corner. Yeah. No, you said that your life was filled... Today you're trying to see what's around that next corner.
Yeah.
And it really hit home for me when I look back on all those build-ups to those and then what or but then what moments. Well, like today I get to actually do that. I get to find out what the then what is.
Yeah.
And then what? So
we had just a little technical difficulty there for a second. Had to turn things off, and now we're back in action again. So I'm not going to pretend like that didn't happen.
It's all good. Life happens. So when I got into recovery this time, my whole life I had always put expectations on things. Things had to look a certain way, and things had to go a certain way. Like by this date, I need to have this accomplished, and I need to do, this. So I don't know where this came from, but I just had this notion that I'm not going to put any expectations on it. Like I'm kind of going to almost go into a free fall and just see what happens. Which looking back on it is a really good place to be in. So, I was the kind of alcoholic that I would work until 8 or 9 o'clock at night, and a lot of that wasn't spent working. I mean, I was at the job site, but then after the job was over, I would go and drive around the Waterston Expressway for a couple hours, drinking. That's what I would do because I couldn't go home and drink in front of my wife. So, one of the parameters I kind of set for myself was, all right, we're really going to tone back the work schedule for now. We're shooting to be off by the middle of the afternoon most days so that we can make a meeting, fellowship with the guys at the house, and get some rest for once, because it's like I didn't really sleep. I just passed out. And so it was good. It was good having that structure, man, because for the first time in my life, I actually felt some semblance of balance. And I think we all kind of strive for that, and you never achieve it. You just get better at adjusting.
You make a series of course corrections and keep on like getting that, just like that old boat in the ocean or the airplane or even driving down the road with the car. You won't drive a straight line.
Right. We can't ever walk a straight line perfectly. Yeah. It's a series of adjustments. So, but by toning back to work, it allowed me to have more room in there to kind of make those adjustments. And really, I think what I was trying to do was figure out what makes Charlie happy. Because that was one of these things. I remember my mother used to always tell me that when I was having all these problems, that you just need to figure out what makes you happy. You need to figure out who you are. And of course, it never really sunk in. But I kind of took it to heart this time. So I've got a nice little routine, and actually what I would do was, this is where the yoga comes in, is we had an option at the house where we could either do like a morning meditation, which was at 6:30, or we could do a night meditation before we went to bed. And you did one or the other. You could do both, but you only had to do one. And so I would do our night meditation, which really wasn't much of a meditation. It was really more a series of readings. There was no like quiet meditation time or like a guided meditation. It was really just more readings and a couple prayers. So I would get up in the morning, and I got into this yoga practice, man, because it set the tone for my whole day. So pretty much for the whole 7 months I was at this house, I would get up every day at 5 and maybe have a little breakfast, hop in the shower, pack my bag for the day or whatever, and then I would go catch a 6 a.m. yoga class. And what I found was it gave me, number one, it improved my physical body from all this damage I've been doing it all these years. So it strengthened and toned my body. And it also gave me like an outlet for some of this, I won't say it's aggression, just pin-up energy.
Yeah, it does.
That I have, And so while you take these classes, they say some motivational things too.
Yep.
You can always start over. What's another one that they always throw at us?
There's so many of them, man. And I
know.
lost them. My teaching has went in the pot over the last 6 months of not touching a teaching spot one bit.
I'm drawing blanks, but I will say this: one of the biggest
ease in
things,
the effort.
Yeah, effort. Find the effort and ease.
The ease and the effort.
There you go. The ease and the effort. And so one of the things that I really learned to do was to pay attention to what was going on in my body. I'd never really been aware of that. And I learned to breathe and like how I could control the way that my heart rate felt, like my blood pressure, the tension in my neck, just through breathing. And so it really helped me throughout the day when I would get in these stressful situations with work, or of course, because I'm living in a recovery house, and my wife's at home. There's problems there. There's all these things that need to be done around the house that I can't do anything about. Well, I could. I would just have to break commitments from the house, which would mean I would get kicked out from the house. And once I got a little taste of sobriety, like I didn't want to jeopardize that.
Yep.
So anyway, that played a really important role in just kind of getting me off the ground, because the other thing when I had tried to get sober before is I physically just felt like shit. I did, because I didn't have the dope and the alcohol to fuel me. And so my body, I just always felt lethargic. I felt slow. I felt like I had no juice. Nothing. And so this, by getting like that sweat going and the breath and just feeling good and confident in my body, mentally I got stronger too. And it was somewhat of a spiritual experience, because I'd never been able to express myself. And so you talked earlier about me doing like maybe not the poses that they called, but just being able to do what felt right at the moment. Like I always felt so constricted in everything that I'd done in life. And so, I go into some place and they tell me that it's okay to play, and I actually explore that opportunity, and it felt good, like do what you need, take care of yourself, those things. And so I just tried to take some of that advice to heart. And then you and I get into the steps, and we start doing this thing. And the first thing that really jumped out at me was the big book, how we read out of the big book. So like my assignments starting out were, we start with Bill's story. I read it, I underline everything that I identify with. And then Dan and I would go, and usually I think we went to Panera Bread on Bardstown Road, just because.
Yeah, we tend to be there after the yoga.
We would usually do it right after
2 p.m.
Y12.
Yoga, yeah.
Yep. But
I'd forgotten about that.
We sat, and we would always kind of eat to start, and then we would say a prayer, and we jump right into this reading. And you would ask me, all right, what do you have underlined on the first page? But I had never been in the book before, so I don't know how you work steps without ever really being in the book, which is why I say that I'd never really worked steps before. But I had never explored that book. I'd been forced to do some readings, and I didn't identify with it. But by sitting down with somebody that had been through the steps, that had done exactly what I had just done, they followed the same blueprint, I was able to identify with that literature, with Bill's story. And I found myself in that book, a book that I thought was not applicable to me. Mm-hmm. It's dated. It's got no purpose for me. This is just for the guys that like to drink gin at the bar, and watch horse racing. So, but the fact that you took the time to sit down and go through that with me, it built a connection. And so a big part of this recovery has been building relationships. And that was the first time that I felt a real connection with another person. Because it's a lot to sit down for an hour and a half, I know you were a busy person, and I'm not saying that you're the only sponsor that does this, but you're my example. This is what I have to go off of. So to sit down and go through this and take the time and identify, it meant a lot to me. So I know you've got something wrapped up in it. You've got time, but listening to you talk about it as well, there was a lot of spirit. There was a lot of emotion. There was a lot of fire. And I even remember seeing you tear up sometimes talking about it.
I tear up when I deliver that message. Yeah. I do often.
And so doing that, it actually, it was kind of like working a second step for me now that I look back at it, because I can see that clearly you believe that this works. And at that point, that was all that I needed. Today, I'm of the belief that my higher power has kind of always been there, but I just choose not to listen to it. Yeah, sure. I get some of these feelings, and today I have a general sense of what to do with those feelings. I kind of know where those are coming from and where those are directed. And a lot of that is my higher power. I think of it as my higher power talking to me. But in the past, I just always chose to ignore that. Mm-hmm. And so anyway, seeing your belief in this program and how it worked, it made me believe. Plain and simple. It just made me believe. And at that point, I was willing to do what you told me to do. And I think I even said that when we talked on the phone once early on. I said, I don't know, what to do, or, what. Maybe I've been in this before, but I'll just do whatever you tell me to do, man. Which is like gold for a sponsor now, I realize, when somebody tells you that. And so just being at that point of not really having any motive for it, or, no direction, know which way to go. You want to pick a direction, you just don't know which direction to go, is actually a good place to be. So it was the best spot I could be at that time.
Yeah. Well, the truth is this whole deal completely revolutionized me. It transformed me 100%, and I know that without a doubt. And when I'm telling another guy about what it did for me, I get emotional about it, and I get passionate, and I'm convicted of the success, of the validity of this program. And if you do this work, it happens for you. Period. No fucking ifs, ands, or buts. Like I've said, with my little tagline there the other night, that this is not a program of some get it and some don't. It's a program of some do it and some don't. And you just do, you do this work and it works, and it's just that fucking simple. It just is, and I know it. But I get touched when I talk about the stuff, man, because I read those stuff out of that big book, and I'm finding myself, even when I'm sponsoring TSSR, which is a 12-step spiritual recovery to folks who are not necessarily got the burned down with the drugs and alcohol, I find myself picking up that blue book anyway and just changing the words that are in it. Because although the TSSR book has got the master's, the doctorate, 12-step, to me, philosophy and methodology in it, I still like the passion in the words that Bill uses in the Alcoholics Anonymous book. And you're right, man. When somebody's sitting down, and that felt the same way with my sponsor, when somebody's sitting down and they're pouring that energy into you, you can't help but feel almost obligated to absorb it. You know, it's like, well, fuck, he's sitting here with me. You know, he's meeting up with me, and he's like spending an hour and a half with me, an hour and a half with me every week. He takes my phone calls every day. You know, and you start going, dang, he's not just doing that for fun, right?
Yeah.
There's something to it.
Well, and I think I realized that it's a mutual commitment to a relationship. You know, it's like, yes, I'm sitting up here in my top bunk at a recovery house when everybody's gone, reading this and identifying and trying to do what I've been told to do. So I've got time wrapped up in it. You've got time wrapped up in it. And now we're coming together on this thing. And so I'll tell you, I felt it was one of the first times that I felt really committed to. And I mean, I feel committed to by my wife, but it lit a fire under my ass. I don't really know how else to explain it other than that. Like, I love that. And today, I really try to surround myself with select people that you either have something that I want and that I'm trying to get, you're going where I'm going, or you need my help. You know, like, that's kind of where I'm at. And so, like, this was, I guess, one of those realization moments that I really do want what he has, because I've been looking to be inspired my whole life. I've been looking to find, like, that passion, that same passion that I had for getting drunk. I've been looking to find it somewhere else. And that was the first time that I ever felt it for AA. That was the first time that I ever felt gung-ho about it. You know, like, there might be something to this, was when we had one of those moments. And then, you know, we get a little deeper into it, and I remember reading that page 53. And I don't want to try to quote it, but what does it talk about? Us being
having trouble with personal relationships. Are you having trouble making a living?
Yeah.
Are you emotionally, is your emotions out of control? You have trouble controlling your emotions.
Yeah. And
the
so
bedevilments is what it's called.
I read that, and it's like all these things right here, and nowhere on that did it ever say anything about drugs or alcohol.
Right.
You know? And so that to me got me really to identify with the whole spiritual sickness. You know, it's like, yes, I have all of the, like, this is me. Actually, in my book, I think I bracketed it and wrote me, ! Out to the side when we did this. And so it's like, well, I have all these things right here, and nowhere is alcohol or drugs mentioned. And
should probably ought to always have a big book when I'm sitting here doing this.
Yeah, it got me curious to do more of the work, because I think some of that was in the build up to getting ready to do our third step prayer.
Yep, it was. Because that's as I bring, I like doing that little thing, because what he's talking about, section on 52, is that we quickly put down other shit in our lives that didn't work for us. Hell, we put down stuff that still works, and there's just a new model out. My phone's okay. Yeah. But a new one come out, and I need to set it down, and I will drop it like a hot fucking rock and jump over to this other thing.
That XR is nice, but I'll take the 11.
Yeah, right. Exactly. And we do it with all kinds of stuff. We do it with our tennis shoes. We do it with all kinds of stuff, And he says we had to ask ourselves why we shouldn't apply to our human problems the same readiness to change our point of view. I mean, we will drop stuff. I mean, you think of like the washer or some kind of appliance goes out in your house. You know how fast you will get a new one?
As fast as I can.
This is not working anymore. So that's the same thing in our minds, in our life and the way I'm operating. My life is not working anymore. This is not working anymore. But I fucking hold on to it. When my washer goes out, I'm over there today, man. Want to know? And if they can't deliver tonight, I'm pissed. Right? Well, tomorrow, I got laundry to do. And so then he says, We were having trouble with personal relationships. We couldn't control our emotional natures. We were prey to misery and depression. We couldn't make a living. We had a feeling of uselessness. We were full of fear. We were unhappy. We couldn't seem to be of real help to other people. Those are some, he goes on to this, was this not the solution of these bedevilments more important than whether we would see newsreels of lunar flight? And that's another thing I love about the book, that in 1935 they were talking about landing on the moon and stuff. And it was however many years later that they actually did it.
Yeah. And yet I clung to all that for 20 plus years.
Yeah. And then what I like to do when I do this, and it's a little bit of cat out of the bag thing, and that's another Scott Lee thing, is that I hold that in my hand and I turn back to the promises. And when it says out back there about, let's see how fast I can get to that. Going to know a new freedom and a new happiness, not regret the past nor wish to shut the door on it, comprehend the word serenity and know peace. No matter how far down the scale we've gone, we can see how our experience can help other people. Feeling of uselessness and self-pity will disappear. We're going to lose interest in selfish things and gain interest in our fellows. Self-seeking will slip away. Whole attitude and outlook upon life will change. Fear of people and economic insecurity will leave us. Intuitively know how to handle situations that used to baffle us. And I ask you, if you have all these bedevilments, all this having trouble, and you want these promises, the solution is to do what's in between. And those are steps 4 through 9. And if you hold it in the pages of the big book, it's not very much. It's not very many pages. And so when a guy looks at that and sees that, it's not that mountain that the steps appear to look like from the outside. When you look at them up there on the wall, and you think, oh my God. And I show you those few pages in between there. And that's the fact of the matter. You get from here to there by doing this.
Yeah. And we did. I loved it. You know, the whole 3rd step prayer, to me, for whatever reason, I wanted it to really sink in. And you encouraged me to do this, writing my own 3rd step prayer. Mm-hmm. Which kind of followed the template, you know. It was. The
words are quite optional, as long as the general
the intent
is expressed.
Yeah, the path, and we did it in front of the Ohm wall at the yoga studio. And anyway, it really hit home for me. You know, like at that point, you talk about it being a contract or a pact between sponsor and sponsee, that we're going to continue to do this work. We're not going to quit halfway through. So it's the decision, just like it says, made the decision.
At some level, I'm asking you to jump in my arms and let me take you through this thing, and just trust the process and allow me to do this, and I'm asking a guy to give me that, because I've already spent a lot of time with you.
Yeah. Already
getting us to here. And the next little bit of time is going to even be a bigger investment. And I mean it with all my heart, that I'm going to help. I'm going to do everything in my power to help you get through this and walk beside you through this process. And I need you. You're also agreement. I need a willing participant.
Yeah.
Because I'm not dragging your ass through this.
Right.
I'm just not.
I'm not going to push you. I'm not going to, I might prod you a little bit, but
I'll be a cheerleader and an encourager, and I'll be all that. But what I ain't going to do is throw a fucking rope around you and drag you through it.
Yeah. And so, we did that 4th step, and I don't want to say I drug my feet on it, to be honest with you. I remember the time when I started it was right around the holidays.
Yeah.
And I know that you had like the teacher training going on, and I had something else that was kind of going on with the house and everything, but it probably took me, I know exactly when we did my 5th step, which was March the 5th. And so it took, maybe a good 2 months working on it. But I like the way we did it, in that we didn't just sit down and, hammer it out for like 8 hours at a time.
Yeah, we don't do marathon sessions in my lineage.
No, we didn't. And so it made it really simple, man. It just kind of became a part of my routine. Working on it. And one thing that I actually found when I was doing this was like I would do a little prayer, but I would work on it in different spots. So, and usually I played music, because what happened is like I would just let iTunes radio or whatever, YouTube music kind of shuffle, and it would put on songs that took me back to different parts of my life. You know, like music a lot of times will make you feel a certain type of way. Hate that expression, by the way. But you get certain feelings from different music. And so it kind of took me back through, you know, some of these things that I may have repressed or been blocked off from. And, you know, I was able to just kind of reflect on some of that, which is, to some sense, is what this is about. You know, bringing all that stuff up to the surface.
Fact-finding and fact-facing causes and conditions.
Yeah. And so that was just a little something that I did, but I guess it helped me kind of get through that process and turn some of that stuff over. And then we always treat ourselves. And you said to do ice cream. Usually I would do popsicles. I have a problem with ice cream.
Yeah, I actually don't. That's just a suggestion. I say find some way to treat yourself. Do something you like. I mean, like one of the ways one of my new guys is treating himself is he sits and plays his guitar for a little bit. Yeah. That's a treat to him. You know, it doesn't have to be sugar. It doesn't have to be
anything. It didn't
take care of the little kid inside of you for a few minutes, so that this work that you've done is acknowledged and appreciated, and you get a little reward at the end of it.
Right. And by doing all that, it didn't become so daunting.
Yep.
You know, like I hear people share on it all the time in meetings about what a mountain this fourth step is, and it's just so painful. And I'll be honest with you, mine really did not seem that painful when I did it. Like, I may have gotten some unpleasant feelings.
That's the magic of this particular methodology, man. It's not that, you know.
Yeah.
It's not out to punish you, and it's not, and you don't hear people sitting around and, you know, the people in our lineage you're talking have happy thoughts about their step work.
Yeah.
You know, they have warm, compassionate kind of thoughts when they think about going through the work for the most part. Now, yeah, you're right. There's some discomfort and there's some, you know, mild anxiety and some things are there, man. But it's not that, you know, just cut you down kind of bullshit.
Yeah, it's not a sense of doom that I hear people talk about in this. And so,
what's the sense in that, you know? And then also I watch those people that have that, and it's like, you know, that don't look like something I'm wanting.
Yeah. You know, this whole process has kind of been about like rebirth.
It is rebirth.
It's not getting
it says we were reborn.
Yeah.
In the third step promises, it says we were reborn.
I was not looking for my old life minus the alcohol.
Yeah, I want something new.
That's not, I want something new, man.
You have to have a sufficient substitute.
Right.
Or it's not going to be.
That hole, that void I was talking about earlier.
The juice in your life. You have to have something that's better than that old shit, or you will go back to it.
Exactly. Yeah, ample substitute. And I've gotten that times 100, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And so we do all this, and one other thing about that fourth step is I remember, you know, you used the trash can analogy that we
that's Christopher. You gave me credit for it a couple times, but you know, I mean, I actually got that from a few people. I hear that's a Scott Lee thing too, is that trash can on your back thing, and that particularly the part about it smelling, that you think everybody else can smell what's in it. I took that from Scott Lee.
Yeah, but knowing the end goal was that we're going to get rid of this stuff. You know, we're going to find a way to deal with this stuff. And in a manner that's going to get you to those ninth step promises. It gave me a sense of hope. You know, it's like I didn't really feel so embarrassed or ashamed or talking about these things. It actually gave me motivation to get through it. Mm-hmm. You know, if anything, because I see what the end game is here, what we're looking to do. And so if I can do that, you know, I don't mind wading through the water.
Well, I better be sitting here as a sponsor looking like something somebody wants, you know, or what the fuck else what am I doing otherwise?
Right. Yeah. I don't understand, you know, people getting scared off because of that. So anyway, there wasn't any feeling of that there, and I was happy to do it. And we did that fifth step, which was awesome.
I love doing that one too, man. Taking people down to the cabin. I have those pictures because we stop at the Fargo sign, and I actually have failed to do that the last couple of times. I need to get back to remembering to take that Fargo picture at the sign.
You remember how freaking cold it was?
Yeah, it was colder than hell.
It was like 3.
Yeah, it was like March. It wasn't supposed to be that cold.
March the 5th. It was like 3 degrees. And
it always seems to be some kind of weirdness down there, man. It's just like never normal. Whenever a fifth step's going on, Mike did his, man, and it rained and rained and rained. The creek got up and was like just rocking, and I don't know. I haven't shared this, and I didn't yet, but like I went down there with Eric to do his not too long ago, and something come over me, man, and I was throwing up during his fifth step. I had to keep on leaving and going outside. And he's like, dude, do we need to go home? Yeah. And I'm like, no, man, we are doing this thing. I feel fine, but something is wanting out of me, man. And he kind of joked, man, that fifth step was so bad that it was like I was projectile vomiting. It really wasn't. It was something I ate or something. We ate the same thing. I don't know what happened. But
we all have that happen.
And I haven't talked about that really openly. Me and him joked around about it, but for whatever reason, we never had a chance to share about it or talk about it. But so that was cool, and I say that this is almost getting to be cliches too. But I when I go down there and do those fifth steps, and the same thing with you. We do it, and the guy I ride home with is not the same as the guy I rode down with.
Yeah, it was definitely a turning point. The whole manner in which we did it. We talk about a lot of people. I hear these people talk about doing a fifth step, and it took me 3 days, doing this fifth step with my sponsor. And I'm like, well, why the hell do I want to relive all this misery for 3 days?
These marathon sessions people talk about.
Yeah. And, I think it's not like we did every name on my list because, you're helping me with the character defects as we're going along with it. But after we do a couple of these, man, it's like I see all these patterns.
Yep.
You
don't have to go through every one of them. You have to voice every one of them just because of that reason.
Yeah, this is exactly
put them in
like
half a dozen buckets or something, and they all fit in that character defect or that character defector.
Pretty much. When we did mine, I don't even know if we talked about 10 items.
Yeah, and it gets to the point where you're just like,
it just becomes redundant, and I'm like, yeah, we were able to kind of categorize everything. And anyway, you went upstairs and did your headphones in. And,
Frank, quickly fall right to sleep. I mean, I just go up there and boom, bam,
it's gone.
There's I noticed too. There's like that emotional exchange that happens here at the podcast thing too, man. When I come down off of this,
I'm gonna be,
and then so same thing when I do a fifth step. It's the same energy as when I come on down off of the fifth step. Then I'm done. Yeah. And I just crash.
It's an emotional high. Yeah. It did a good one.
Yeah, really good. Yeah. And when I say I crash, I mean I not crash like crash and burn crash. I mean I go to sleep quickly. I don't fool around because like I always ensure you guys that I'm gonna be asleep up there. So you talk out loud to your higher power. You can say you can do anything you want to because I am not. Besides putting earplugs on, I am not gonna hear a word. I'm gonna be asleep in just a minute.
So I did the thing. I waited. Kind of meditated for about an hour, and I actually had put my book up on the shelf. I walked over there and I pulled my book down. I read the passage in the book, and then I remember it was like a perfect moment, man. I went out back, like if you go out your kitchen door, and I kind of walk out, and the only light that's on is just a little one coming from the kitchen, but there was a stump right at the end of that light, and so I walked over there to say my 7th step prayer. And it's like we're tucked away. It's freezing cold, but we're just kind of like in this pocket of safety, And so I look up, and it's like I can see all the stars. It was crystal clear that night. And I just felt touched. Like I was ready to give those defects up. And it's not like they're completely gone. But the moment, the significance of the act meant a lot to me, and the setting only enhanced that. Yeah. And so, I was not the same when...
Because the safe and protected zone down there.
Yeah, when we came back. And so we get into the amends, and, that process is actually still an ongoing one for me today. I've got... I made some amends to some past friends. I made some to some workers, to some employers. And probably the most significant one that I made to date is to my wife, which was really a very touching experience. I actually did get emotional during that one. Because through the whole thing, she was such a trooper. When I told her I wanted to move into this recovery house and get into this thing, she basically just told me to go. You do what you need to do. And once I got a little bit of freedom and I could see her, a lot of times, like, I might take an overnight pass, but other times, if there was something going on within the program or with guys at the house, I wanted to be a part of that. And I was kind of conflicted about it because in one sense, it brought back feelings of me putting her off to drink.
Yeah.
I'm kind of like, how is she seeing this as any different? And there was a period early when I thought we were going to get divorced, and I think you probably remember me calling you about it. We had the whole triage conversation.
Yeah,
but
we didn't need that right now.
Yeah, I made her. I told her, which is what you told me to tell her. If you just give me a little bit of time and let me work these 12 steps, that man that comes home is not going to be the same man that you married, that you've been dealing with the last 2 years. And that can be a blessing and a curse. Actually, it's definitely been a readjustment, getting moved back in, and things are getting a lot better. But anyway, I had to make that amends to her just for that past behavior. And so that kind of just springboarded us, because I did that probably about a month after I had moved home, and things were like really awkward up to that point. I felt like I was almost kind of avoiding her. Mm-hmm. Not purposely, but like I felt a lot more drawn to do things in recovery than I did to spend time with my wife. And so that kind of springboarded us into this healing process that we have. And another big amends, actually, I just finally completed today, which was a financial amends to the University of Louisville for some past student debt. Mm-hmm. And I wrote a big check, and it's funny, I shared this on our group me, but when I handed it over to the guy that I've been working with from the university, he was like, "I'm so sorry. This, he's like, I know this is, he's like, apologize. He's like, I know this is really painful, this and that." And I just smiled, I was lit up. I said, "You're doing me a favor right now." I was like, literally, you are setting me free. This is more relief than pain by far. And so that was really great. Because I'm getting ready to do an amends to my mother, and she was actually a co-signer on this loan. And this is one thing that she's been pestering me about for almost 10 years now. You got to get this repaid, because her name was on there too. And it's not like this is something that I'm going to throw in her face, that this has been done.
And you also, I need to get it done really quick too, because if she happens to run across this podcast and you ain't done it yet.
Yeah. Oh yeah. No, she won't. She doesn't know about the podcast, so I'll be sure not to mention it to her. But
you better watch out.
I knew that this was something that I could just tell by how much she brought it up that it was really important to her, and so I wanted to do that, make that amends to them, to kind of springboard into making this amends to her. I don't know. I'm not saying I'm killing two birds with one stone. I'm just saying I know it was really
cumulative effect.
Right. It kind of one just leads into the other. Yeah. And so she's had a lot of anxiety and energy, and pressuring me to take care of it. So before I went to her, I wanted to have this issue addressed.
Sometimes our amends are also taking the other person off the hook for something they're dealing with,
Right.
More so as much as getting us.
Yeah, and so the longer I stay sober, we have all these like blessings that come into our life, and one of those has been starting to sponsor people, and I love it. I really do.
Me too, man.
I absolutely love it. I had somebody come up and tell me they wanted me to sponsor them. It wasn't like they really even asked. It was more like, I really want you to sponsor me. And, obviously that's a little bit of an ego hit, but also like it's just confirmation that I'm on the right path. Mm-hmm. that I must be doing something right. And like, I always think that my higher power talks to me through other people. I just got to be willing to listen. And so I don't know, man. That was part of our deal, was that if I worked with you,
I have those ground rules, man.
Yeah.
My very last ground rule is, man, when we get done with this stuff, I'm going to expect you to give it away to the next guy, because I need some help, man. I can't handle all the people that need it. We're building an army that's running around helping people one at a time.
Yeah. And I didn't want to at first. I did not want to. And I think some of that is wrapped up in fear. Some of it was wrapped up in fear. I'm not ready for this. I don't have any more time, man. I don't have any more time.
Yeah, time's our big thing.
Yeah. But
I'll talk to you about time and sponsoring people if you want.
Yeah. But it does. I mean, it's.
I just turned my phone over and somebody had just showed me today. I did a 3rd step prayer with somebody today, and gave them the notebook instructions. And I turned my phone over a minute ago, and they got their notebook
ready to go.
Yeah, and you just watch, and it's like cool, man. We'll get her done. We'll keep moving, man.
Yeah. One of my sponsees is getting ready to do that 3rd step decision, and he is actually writing his own too, which is really cool. I think we're going to go down to Bernheim Forest and do it.
We drove right by there.
Hopefully this weekend.
Because we went down to Bardstown to do this person's 3rd step prayer.
The motherland.
Yep.
So I don't know. It's been a very rewarding experience, and it's also kind of helped.
Tomorrow.
What?
I'm doing another 3rd step prayer with somebody tomorrow.
How do you have time?
I don't have any idea.
But it's kept me from plateauing in my recovery. That's one thing that I think is really easy for me to do, and probably a lot of other people. Is
you keep sponsoring people, you can't.
Is to plateau, and so
and you won't get complacent.
Like sponsoring people,
keeps it fresh, and then every time I take somebody through the steps, it ends up being like they're holding a mirror because they've got something going on that I got too. And I go, every time I take somebody through the steps, almost like going through the steps myself, almost.
Yeah.
It's not quite as intense and heavy, but every time is similar to that.
Yeah. So I want him to get it, and I try to bring. It's not intent, like it's not forced, but like once we get going in there and we get reading, I get intense about it. I'm a very intense, like passionate person, and so today the things that I am passionate about, I try to push to the forefront of my life. If you, like I said earlier, if you're indifferent or kind of middle of the road on things, I probably don't have time for you. And that might sound stuck up or something, but really it's just that I know what I want, and my time is valuable, and I value your time too. So,
if you just don't want to grow along, if you want to grow along with me, frankly, and again, when I say that, it sounds like that arrogant thing, but if you want to grow along with me, I'm got your arm.
Yeah.
But if you don't, I'm not staying behind.
Yeah.
I'm not going to wait back there and wallow in whatever's going on. I'm moving forward.
Yeah. Which is what my whole life felt like before I actually got sober. It was just wallowing.
Yep.
It was just a constant spin cycle. And it was just I like to call it the zero, man, like step zero.
Yeah.
It's just literally a big donut that you're going around in. And
it's a vicious cycle.
Exactly. I don't know what else
that sigh just happened from you. It happens every time here. At some point, people do that sigh. It's towards the end. They'll go, I don't really know what else, or I think that's about it. And you'll hear it, and you just did it.
Yeah,
we didn't actually talk about some of the miracles, but we are running out to a pretty good time length here too. So, and we can always talk some more. And frankly, you've just hit the 1 year mark too. So, in some level, they're just starting to happen.
Right.
But you've had a lot of cool things happen, and one of the things I think is really cool personally is you're getting ready to start yoga teacher training next month, and that's neat.
Yeah.
You'll have another growth spurt in that process, and I tell people all the time, do these steps, and then light your rocket fuse, man, because the sky's the limit after that, man. And you get this stuff behind you, and you can do the steps again, and you start sponsoring people and start grabbing up new things, continue to grow in effectiveness and understanding, continue to improve the conscious contact with your higher power. Continue.
So this goes back to what I was saying earlier about the and then what, and I could never get to the what. Something always happened before. So just literally in the last couple days, I've had a new business opportunity that's kind of opened up for me that I would have just kind of shrugged off before. And I don't really know what it's going to become, but I'm curious. And so I'm going to explore that. Whereas before I feel like I would have just defaulted to comfort zone.
Yep.
So I'm open to doing that. I'm excited about the yoga teacher training. I can't believe it's actually a month. It's about a month away. And I was supposed to be in the one with you a year ago. I don't know if you remember that.
Yeah, I remember. Yeah, you asked me about it, and as much as I wanted you to be in it with me, the right answer is no. Let's do these steps. Let's set everything else aside and put tourniquets on all the other things. Just stop the bleeding.
Yep.
Don't do anything we don't have to do, and just do this.
Yeah.
And in a few months, you're going to be a new guy. And I'm not asking for years. In a few months, you'll get through these steps, and like I said a minute ago, buckle up, and the ride's getting ready to really take off.
Yeah, I'm just excited for it.
I hated telling you that, though. I really did.
No, but you know what? It was absolutely the right answer.
I knew it was the right answer.
It was absolutely the right answer, and I could tell the hesitation in your voice too, because it's like, I want you to do it, but I don't think you should do it. But looking back on it, it was 100% the right thing to do. It would have been overload, or if I would have pulled it off and stayed sober, I'd probably be divorced right now.
There's right. Well, there's a demonstration to my higher power that this is my focus, and when I'm able to do that through this work, you get some extra results, so to speak, out of it by being able to stay focused and only doing this and saying, okay, God, higher power, whatever your name is, I'm here to do this.
Yeah,
and I'm dedicated to it. And I'm not going to get myself bogged down with anything else. This is what I'm doing.
Right, and it was the right thing to do. That's
here we are a minute later.
And here we are. Yeah, I mean, and it's gone by so fast. It's gone by so fast. I can't even explain. It just, like I said, it felt like it kind of drug on the first month or two, and then after that, man, it's just been an absolute rocket. And mostly all good. I'm so excited for the future, man. Getting that token the other night, I love it. Not even for me, but I love that demonstration because I want other people to see how much it works.
I knew you were wanting to take it back every time. Because we had some conversations about some people weren't getting what you were getting.
Yeah,
and you had genuine concern about these guys who were not getting what you were getting.
Yeah. There's
and you wanted to take it back to them.
There's different brands of recovery. There's no way to get around it. But for me, I need fire in my recovery.
The juice.
I need the juice, I need the zest. I don't want Lay's. I want, the Cool Ranch. Yeah. I need all the fireworks in my recovery.
Man, we're going to have to start wrapping this dude up, brother. Because one of the things I do have run into a limit on is that like an upload capacity. I can only, because that gets to be mechanics that I have to actually back down the quality a notch or two in order to get it to upload because it's too long.
No, you're good.
But great job tonight, man. And if you have what I do after every single time, man, if you got concluding thoughts, let me hear them. You got anything you want to say before we sign off? Any kind of concluding thoughts, message to the people who might be listening and need to hear it?
I just want to say, number one, thank you for having me on. Number two, I talk about, like those little things that happen that aren't coincidences, and it's funny. So I had kind of been not putting you off, but you'd said something to me and I was looking to delay. I was kind of like, some of that was I wanted to do this amends with my mom before I do it because I felt like that was a major kind of milestone in this process. But so when you got, things happen, and
I've had two cancellations this week that I'm frankly not okay with, but and I didn't know what I was going to do because I've made this commitment to getting new content out once a week, and you guys were going to have to listen to me if Charlie didn't come back. Didn't come in.
I saw your voicemail as right as I was falling asleep last night. I didn't listen to it, and so I got up this morning to leave, and I listened to it, and you said you were kind of in a pinch, and I was like, well, that's it, I'm doing it.
Thank you.
So again, like the higher power, I always get that sign like that I'm looking for. It's like, okay, it must be the right time to do it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's why everybody canceled, just because it was your turn.
Yeah. And I mean, that's the way I kind of look at things.
Yeah, that's the way I look at it too. Yeah. And I don't like go into it from that end. And, but, when I said, and I was asking, and I have a passion to we've got a lot of guys hitting the 1 year.
Yeah.
And I like the guys that I worked with, Vlad, the guys that are getting 1 year like that. So, and I think you all have a little bit of like, you feel a little bit closer to want to come be on a podcast because of our relationship, right?
Right.
And so I appreciate you coming on and helping me out with this. So on that flip side of that, and I want to get some of this 1 year energy in it because people are getting well and getting like, y'all are these guys are hitting 1 year and they're rocking. They ain't just okay.
Yeah.
They're fucking doing great.
Yeah.
You look at all of them, you pull a newcomer in, or hell, you pull an old timer in and say, how long that guy been sober? How long Charlie, listen to Charlie for a minute, tell me how long he's been sober. They won't guess 1 year.
Yeah. Marshall thought I'd been sober for over 5 years.
Yeah.
He told me that the other night. I was like, why would you think that? And he paid me some really nice compliments after that. Thank you, Marshall.
Because that's what happens with us.
But yeah, a year ago, I could not imagine how good I feel right now.
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't imagine it. You know what? And I didn't even try to imagine it. Kind of the just do the work and wait approach really worked. You know, it helped.
Trust the process.
Trust the process. I did trust the process.
Yeah, you did. You did exactly
First time in my life I trusted the process.
And the human washing machine worked once again.
Yeah.
It works every single time.
Yeah.
This is not a program of some get it and some don't. This is not options. These are not a iffy thing. This is a do the work, get the results deal.
Absolutely. It's been great.
Yeah, man. Thanks for coming on, man. Darren's music will be wrapped around this thing. Darren Frank. DTMWW.net. Woodworking stuff and handyman services if you're local here in the metro Louisville area. 12-Step Spiritual Recovery by James Christopher Cohn on Amazon. Many different formats and volumes and ways to absorb that data. That is this 12 steps that we're talking about. If you're not having a blast in your own recovery, it's your own damn fault. It's available to you. This higher level of fun, this juice in your life is available. If you're not getting it, reach out. I have the best sponsor in the entire world. And if you don't think yours is, keep looking because he's out there waiting on you. I have the best home group in the universe. If you don't think yours is, keep looking because it's out there for you. Don't settle for less than what this program has to offer you. If you're finding that you're sitting there feeling like you're settling, get out and start talking to some people and go out there looking for the people who have got the juice in their lives and ask them where they got it and if they'll share it with you, and I bet they will. Thank y'all for allowing me to participate in my recovery in this manner tonight. Peace out.
Always tried to be just who they wanted. Always tried to do everything they said. Only did the things they would approve of. Lock away all your dreams inside your head. Year after year you try to be a good girl. They never failed to point out when you were bad. Stuck to the program like a robot. Became a trophy for mom and dad.